Hello folks and welcome again to our game on this Thursday morning. You were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, an awful lot different from earlier in the week.
Yeah, I don't know how bright-eyed I am. I'm actually having a delayed reaction to my weekend. I feel worse on Thursday than I did on Monday. Do you ever get to, sometimes you feel there's an initial adrenaline burst that just gets you through a weekend or gets you through a bit of work, and I'm way worse now than I was last Monday for some reason. I don't know why, and I don't even drink.
Right, yeah. Well, hey, we have a fair old show coming up, including a man from Knockadairy. Probably did one of the most important interventions in what is Limerick's current run of dominance. Tom Condon, he'll be on the show, so we'll be looking to him to draw back, I suppose, the curtain of what's happening down there
in Knockadairy, they did a thing, the hand of Tom. They basically made a statue of his hand after that catch at the end of the 18 on Ireland. It's in It's in the clubhouse, I believe, like a kind of a bust of his hand. Yeah,
like that hand was his own property for a long no one was too interested in it. Is that a bird top, Mick? It has to be.
Oh, surely is. Yeah, surely is.
Yeah, let's see. We want to just remind folks that if you want to get us to come to your town and do one of our live GAA fundraisers, the first one's been booked for Rowan Moore in County Waterford, so we're looking forward to taking our live show down there. It's going to be an absolute cracker. We're looking at celebrity guests, which we're currently lining up. We're going to have quizzes, fun challenges, local legends, and I suppose there's a great old GAA term or country sort of term that we'll be talking a whole load of rot, won't we?
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. Should be a great all night down right in the heart of the city. I didn't realise Rowan was in the city as well. So you have Rowan, you have De La Salle, Mount Sion and Ballygunner basically operating out of the city. But yeah, it should be a belter of a night and with huge funds raised for the club as well.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about so far this weekend? What's the big story for you before we really get into game by game?
Actually, there's a load of not necessarily big stories, but a lot of interesting stories. Like Kieran Carey, who we've had on the show as well. There's literally no end to that man. So I know he kicked a small bit of football back in the day, but he's going playing and soccer, as is well documented on our show. But he's going kicking football with the Limerick Masters, which is the over 40s team. And listen, that's grand going trying something different if you're 41 or 2. He's 53. There's literally no end to the man. And he's switching codes, obviously. And I think it's the first time that they've had a Masters team entered. So, listen, I always think lads like that will generate even more interest in a competition like that as well. Stephen O'Neill, I think, is the main man for Tyrone. I think they've won it the last couple of years. Imagine getting lumbered with Mark and him at a Masters game where you're just going out for a bit of a spin.
Especially if you're that bit of an older age as well. 53-year-old Carey, now, he's still very ripped from what we can see anytime we have him on the show, but surely the fleet of foot isn't there anymore. And if he's up against someone like Steve O'Neill, Stevie's going to throw him a shimmy and Carey will be off for a taxi. But look, Tom Condon knows Carey very well. We might ask him.
We surely will. I don't know if Kieran's ever been sent for a taxi, to be honest with you, in any code.
Okay, next bit of story is news, I should say, is that Kieran Connolly, he's out for the remainder of the season for Tipperary. We haven't even seen him play for Tipperary yet. He went abroad last year. We'd seen him been brilliant for the club in recent times, Lockmore Castleiney. But it's a problematic hip injury. This is something that affects an awful lot of young GAA players or different age GAA players over the year. He was an under-20 All-Ireland winner back in 2019, and it really does add to a terrible injury list for Tipperary. Paddy Cadell's gone with the cruciate. Barry Heffron's not around with the same injury, as is Craig Morgan. Cathal Barrett's shoulder at the moment. Niall O'Mara with the groin. Ger Brown is out for the year with the knee as well. So, it's when it rains, it pours, huh?
The only thing I'd say to you, Shane, wasn't it the same in Waterford? Wasn't it the same in Waterford in Cattle's first year? And you have a hip injuries coming into the championship even. And I remember Pádraig Mattley doing his cruciate that time as well. It's the sort of thing where Cattle will just plough on. It would have been great to have Cadell. It would have been great to have Connolly. It would have been great to have Ger Brown. Niall O'Mara might be back yet. Barrett might feature yet, depending on how far you go or how far you progress. But he's just you will not hear Cattle giving out about it or lamenting it. I can tell you that. He will just put the head down and plough on. There'll be great players to have, but other lads will have to step up like they did in Waterford that year in 2020 when there was lots of big names down.
Yeah, and they're not the only county. across the board, there's players picking up injuries, isn't it? Oisin Salmon is injured now for Galway at the moment. You look at Cork and the amount of players that have had injuries. I'll just go through a few. I can't think off the top of my head all the different injuries that they have, but Dara Fitzgibbon, Alan Connolly, obviously Mark Coleman, he's out with the cruciate. There's someone very obvious that I'm not thinking of as well in Cork, but they have some major injury worries at the moment. Look at Dublin, they've had no Ronan Hayes, Alex Considine, obviously they've lads heading away as well also. But I do think there are an awful lot of injuries across the board. Do you think in some ways it might be the heavy training load that players are under? Is it even the slight change in weather? Is it training on slobbery pitches? God knows. Or is it just always the way that there's always loads of injuries?
Nah, there's always plenty of them, yeah, to be fair. I'd say potentially with it all been a bit more condensed, that they're trying maybe to do a bit more training than they normally would have, or there's less time for rest maybe in between. But it's just one of these kind of things. And can't be hoping all his luck is, out of the way now at this stage. But chances are, as the games start rolling in, it's only natural that you pick up muscle tears and knocks and different things as it rolls on. So it's just one of these things.
Yeah, ML89 says osteopubis is an awful one if it is. No cure for it other than just to stop for a month or two. Usually comes and goes with overtraining, rules you out of everything for a long stint. Have you ever had that? I've never had it.
No, thank God, no. But I've heard, basically when the pubic bones are rubbing off each other, unbelievably painful. From what I've talked to different lads and stuff like that. So, yeah, by all accounts, I think Connolly's going for surgery. I think you can avoid surgery, but it's something like a 6-month rehab process or something like that. And you're not guaranteed that it's going to be right after that as well. But that's a really tricky injury. Now, I haven't heard as much about that as the osteopubitis one. Is the groin one, obviously. The hips are a bit different. Connolly has hips, and obviously you generally have to get operated on when it's a hip.
But groin, they're all interconnected down there. All the different muscles are pulling from one area to the other.
Yeah, it's not simple. And when you get surgery for something like that, there's always the chance that that could take a couple of years off your career potentially as well, because you're after getting something done at an age that you really shouldn't be getting done, but it's the only way to kind of progress your career or continue on or get back fully fit. So it's kind of a tricky one. But I've heard of lads like with hips even that surgery and that might not even help, might not even solve the problem.
Again, nothing easy with the pubic bone.
Dead right. You will surely will not.
Are Tipp still back? Ask Rodogo Grack on. And with the same team, Richard Hogan says, sure, Shane, injuries don't really matter because Tipp are back. Look, the problem with Tipperary is nearly having too many hurlers. So next man up.
Too many risky hurlers.
Yeah, next man up. I'm only joking. I hope the lads get well soon. Sean O'Sullivan, wonder how long overtraining, the overtraining trend of 10 years ago will affect current players. Think physios are getting a lot more, say, in modern setups.
That, Shane,
yeah.
I would always say my generation was the guinea pig generation about 15 years ago. We did everything, and around the era of when your brother was playing with Tipp, now Tipp had Keen O'Neill in and would have turned things around. And I remember chatting to Paddy about that, and they started doing different things that they'd never done before and started prehabbing and different stuff like that. But I always think my generation was the guinea pig generation. I remember doing squats with like 75, 80 kg on my back, and then you're thinking, geez, without weight here, I'm doing an incorrect squat. I'm actually doing, and it's only in recent years that it would have corrected it. So we were putting 80 kg on our backs while doing something incorrectly. Like, it's bonkers, really. Some of the stuff that was going on back then was absolutely mad. You go from one fad to the next fad, and it was just, mad kind of stuff. And I'd have hip, knee, all sorts of different problems now as a result of it. You'd like to think that the modern day GAA player, things are a bit more scientific and planned out an awful lot better, and they're given adequate rest as well.
But even think of like the Meath team of the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of them have had huge issues as well. Now, maybe that's a different thing than like what you're saying, the generation that we're going through all these kind of weights and stuff like that. But you just wonder what the price will be to pay in another 10 or 15 years' time when you're, let's say, like in your 60s at that stage in another 10 or 15 years' time.
God only knows, 10 or 15 years. I remember being told I got a scope done on my knee in 2015, and he said, the surgeon said like that you're going to need a knee replacement in 10 years. That was 8 years ago. Now I think I've managed it quite well since then. As in, I stopped running. Like in the last couple of years, I don't run, bar I'm playing games.
Makes for a good cornerback.
Yeah. Well, listen, some would say most cornerbacks never ran at all. They just pulled and dragged. But you'd like to think that the current generation now are not been exposed to anything like that. You know, you're always going to have cases where different things are going to happen, but that, you know, the vast majority aren't going to be left with chronic injuries.
Yeah, and I think these days the physio is nearly getting more of a say than the manager, who would just say,
Too much of a say, as a lot of like some of the club managers, and particularly old fellas, will be giving out about them.
And then you need to really trust your physio as well. Like, you have to have the confidence that they've got this right. Because another thing is, back in the olden days, the guinea pig generation, I'd say a lot of the physios were making mistakes as well and telling the lad, look, you're ready to go now, go back out, hamstring, boom, gone again. Look, I'm not throwing them all in with the one, but like, there were some. Look, you've another little yarn for us, have you?
No, I just remember chatting to a physio that was working with a really high-profile hurling team, and the most high-profile player on the team had picked up a hamstring injury, and you know, the manager asked the physio, like, "What's the story there?" And he's like, 2 to 3 weeks. He's got a minor tear or whatever." It's like, "Yeah, but like, we need him in 10 days." He's like, 2 to 3 weeks, minor tear, like, he'll do serious damage. Yeah, no, but he's playing in 10 days, and it's just like that's. You know, that's the way it was. You'd like to, like, it's different if you're playing a knockout game where, you know what I mean? You kind of make decisions. With a knockout game, you're kind of just like, what will be, you know, and if you're carrying something into it, it could be the end of your season or whatever. But some lads, I don't know, it's the balancing act. You'd like to hear from some physios who've had some horror stories, because there's no point in saying any different. Some lads and ladies are very, very hard to deal with, and the manager, just whatever you're selling, unless it's what he or she wants to hear, they do not want to hear it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, imagine the pressure you're under to try and give the manager the answer he wants and trying to tell him the bad news. You're probably more worried about telling the manager this player's out for a few weeks than you are the player. PWell74 says, what are Tipp doing wrong to get all these injuries? Are they just not physically up to standard? Now, this is a loaded question from a Limerick man, I reckon. Were you saying that last year when Cian Lynch was injured and when Peter Casey was injured, and, you know, the year before when Mike Casey and Richie English were getting cruciates? I think sometimes you can have a spate of these things, but like, there might be a little point in there somewhere that, you know, we're not sure what Train and Tipperary did last year versus this year versus the year before. Who knows? Maybe the load has increased and some players' bodies aren't quite up to it. But I'm not saying that from a position of knowledge. It's just, you know, that could be happening any team really. Like, I know Sean Lennon, Keenan Fahy and Tom Monaghan says ML89 have all been out with it in the last couple of years. This is probably osteopubitis or hips, held back all three's developments, only coming through now in their mid-20s. Like, it can happen anywhere really, especially when you have a change of management and maybe backroom team.
Yeah, when you're changing regime and a regime is changing drastically, and particularly if your load is up an awful lot compared to what has happened before, this can happen. Listen, I was always one of those players that felt that and was always you'd pick up a knock or something that happened. A lot of people just plow on through and can get through it absolutely no problem. Sean O'Sullivan put up a good one there. Yeah, I think he's what's your man's name with the two Johnnies? It's Noel, isn't it?
Noel Furlong.
Noel Furlong. Too much ball catching going on. 19 years I played senior and I never caught a ball. I just that just, to me, hits at the heart of so many communities and so many old fellas in GAA clubs around the country.
See, Seamus Qualter has taken over as the Roscommon senior hurling manager for the second time. He's taken over from Francis O'Halloran, who stepped down after a bit of controversy earlier this month. So it's good for the players that they at least have a manager in. And it's kind of interesting. Where do you go, like, with this season really for the Roscommon hurlers, whose level of commitment was questioned by the outgoing manager? It'd be a bit like, I can't but think of Offaly in 1998 when Babs was talking about the sheep of the heap. He left, and maybe that kind of allowed the players to have a crusade for the rest of the season.
Yeah, maybe so. I believe there's a few not involved from last year. I don't know if that's to do with the managerial setup or what it is. But Seamus obviously would have a good record from when he was there before. I think he won an under-21 B All-Ireland. He obviously has 2 Christie rings at Westmeath from back in the day as well, 05 and 07. They didn't wait around, in fairness. They have someone in place fairly quickly. It's only about a week and a half since the previous management team stepped down. Now, the chairman, the hurling chairman, made one comment and I just thought it was interesting. It was like, best of luck to Seamus. We're great to have him back. I just hope I hope he gets the commitment of the players and the clubs. And I don't know if that was a bit pointed or what. The players will probably tell you different to what actually happened under Francis O'Halloran's reign, maybe than to what he said. So there's probably a bit of balance needed in that, but they have a kind of a familiar face back to helm. He led that league to the 2018 county title, and he was at Tremaine in 2021 when they got to the first county final in 25 years. So he should have an in-depth knowledge of all the players that are available to him.
But best will in the world, right? If you're let's say a top football team in Roscommon. Now, I'm not sure the spread of players that play with the Roscommon Hurlers, how many of them are like with strong Gaelic football teams. But if you're with a strong Gaelic football team and you want to set up for your club leagues and all that kind of stuff, you would imagine in somewhere like Roscommon, they're looking down at, just why are you going off playing Division 3A hurling and playing lower tier league when you could be training with us? We need to get right for the football league. We need to be set up right for the championship come summer, all this kind of stuff. I'd say there's big pressure on players to not even bother lining out with their county when it's a lower tier hurling league.
Yeah, I've heard something similar anecdotally in Longford and counties like that as well. When you do play both, and as I said, like hurling is not only looked down on in certain counties, like, but it's they play very few games. The championship is run off maybe in the course of a week or 10 days. Remember, it was a controversy with the Longford County hurling final a couple of years ago. Was it played midweek or something like that on a Wednesday or Friday or something? But it's a very, very tricky one there. And I suppose that's where, if you're a hurling man and that's your first passion, and football, or if it is probably your first passion, that's where you have to put your foot down and just it wouldn't matter to me whether you're playing Division 3B or Division 10B or whatever it is. If that's what your passion is, then that's what you go and follow. And the football finishes the same as any other county player. The football or your club starts back up when you're finished at,
Heartbeat passion, isn't it?
Passion, yeah.
Sean O'Sullivan with a sneering enough comment, seeing as we'd mentioned Babs. You'd miss Babs, very shrewd manager, never gave away anything, always shying away from the media or sharing his opinion. Emil89 says, a lot of the Pádraig Pearse's lads this in Roscommon would be hurlers first, but obviously footballer is a bigger ticket in town and they're operating at a higher level at club too. Also, Roscommon, we might as well point out in the league that they did draw one and win one, and their loss was by 7 points. So it's not like they're going around and getting absolutely hockeyed every week or anything like that. So that's the situation as they head into the fixtures this weekend. Mark Jackson, he made a bit of history there at the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, mad enough one. And hat tip to Bill Hill, Wicklow.com, who obviously does a lot of stats on Wicklow GAA. But he had it up over the weekend that Mark Jackson hit the 100-point mark for the Wicklow footballers. This is Mark Jackson, the Baltinglass and Wicklow goalkeeper. So, it's not too often that a goalkeeper would hit the 100-point mark. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, would Cluxton have even hit the 100-point mark across league and championship? I'm just thinking of other goalkeepers maybe that would have done it. Jackson hit 7 points against Offaly in 2019 when they beat them after extra time in the championship. I think he has 62 points in league and 39 points in championship. But I can't think of too many keepers that would have put up those type of numbers.
Now, if Wikipedia can be trusted, and obviously this is trying to react very quickly and get the stats, it's saying that in 111 inter-county appearances, now I'm presuming this is championship only, he has 48 points. So that's more than the 39 in championship for Jackson, but sure, Jackson isn't retired either.
No, and Jackson's only playing with Wicklow since 2017. So to hit the 100-point mark in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, early 23, he could have what he's done already, he could easily do it again throughout the rest of his career. So it's a fair outgoing. I'd love to hear if anyone knows of a goalkeeper that scored more in football, in league and champ, because it's only a relatively new phenomenon. And didn't Cluxton have problems with his groins or his hips as well? He didn't it's almost like he scored that free in 11 to win the All-Ireland, and he didn't take too many frees thereafter.
Yeah, it definitely, he did it a little bit the next couple of seasons, but it definitely slowed down. It was probably something that took away from Dublin, and the fact that they continued winning despite taking away such a nerveless free taker was very important for them. Let's see here, a comment from Christopher Conlon. Barry Heffernan, Craig Morgan, Niall O'Mara and Cathal Bard could all be back for the championship. We'll see with Barry Heffernan and Craig Morgan, because they both did their cruciates in kind of, I think, July and maybe August time last year. So it'll be a big ask for them to be able to make an impact this coming season, especially even if the Cruciates do come right. Patrick Coleman said Waterford had loads of injuries under Derek. By the way, if you want to get your comments in on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, we'd be happy to chat with them. We've got a couple of coaching clinics coming up very soon. We've got Barry Hennessy, who's obviously Limerick's backup goalkeeper there for a number of years, so he'll have all the inside secrets. Pádraig Mahoney and Richie Power, they're going to Piltown, County Kilkenny, Friday, March 3rd, 7:30 p.m. Cannot wait for that. I think it's going to be a cracker. And then also down in Valley Rovers, County Cork, Saturday, March 11th, 11 a.m. Pat Ryan obviously played for Limerick there for lots of years. Brick Walsh and Michael Fenley. So you can get the tickets in the video description. There's a link just there. They're going to be absolutely cracking shows.
I wonder would I'd say the Brick, knowing how quiet and unassuming he is, I wonder what he thinks of the Brick flick, or having it's amazing to have a skill named after you, isn't it? But he wouldn't be going looking for the limelight. It's probably something that he mightn't even like in a way, but his name has been mentioned in nearly every game that's played around the country. Most training sessions, it's do the hand pass or do the Brick flick. It's mad to think that one fella could leave his name. His name is etched in hurling forever, let alone what he did for Waterford.
Is there any other Brick flick, any more eponymous skill? I would look one where you just say, for example, I'd say the Galan point. You probably know the exact type of point I'm talking about, do you? That sort of crossfield ball just outside the D or to the side of the D. He collects and fires it over the shoulder on his left hand side. Yeah. Are there any other skills like that where it's eponymous?
I think the Anthony Nash penalty / free was until it was ruled out.
And it became the Nash rule, didn't it, then?
Yeah, it did, yeah. I can't think of anything. Brian Whelan used to do a little the pickup when the ball was down at his foot. He did it in a couple of championship games. The chop flick now is I know Hegarty and Lynch and these boys do it, but you're probably still not going to call it the Hedgehow or the Lynch flick or something like that.
What? Yeah, Troy would be fairly upset now.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. But even with that, none of them would have had their name carried to it. And Paddy Levy's doing his best, I'd say, to have it as the Levy flick now at this stage. He's doing it that much.
Yeah, Sean O'Sullivan here. He goes, what skill would you name after yourselves or someone else? The Verney Turney.
Yeah.
The Shane Clare. And I like how he spelled it phonetically there, the Shane Clare. Going in and getting the arse in and driving the man out of the way.
The Verney Turney, as in he was turned and left. It was dust. There was dust coming up as he was chased after forward.
Sean O'Sullivan is keeping the sneer and going lovely this morning. Stephen O'Keefe must be fuming. Surely it should be the Saki rule, not the Nash rule. And obviously he was the one who blocked that free, which led to it be the rule coming in. The rock shoulder. Mackie started the solo run.
Yeah, the socks rule.
Yeah, socks. Yeah. Next piece of news, we've kind of mentioned it already. Oisín Salmon, I should say, is facing a lengthy period on the sideline because of a shoulder injury that he picked up in the Fitzgibbon Cup final. Again, that's a bit of a blow there, and very annoying for a manager, of course, to lose a player to injury. But again, it makes you wonder that if they just had that January month for colleges only, would players you never know what's the impact of the player training or playing with his county team, then he has to go and play Fitzgibbon and then back with the county team and back to Fitz. Maybe the player is tired, fatigued, stretched, whatever it might be, that maybe you'd be less inclined to have injuries across the board at this time of the year if you just did free up January, or if you just said, do you know what, we have a panel of 30, 35 lads. If you're in college, as much as possible, we're just not going to use you until we get to league. Yeah,
I think with something like this, which is a contact injury, contact injuries are going to happen, realistically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that. If it's a bad hamstring tear or something like that due to overuse, I think that's a different story altogether, maybe.
But you could still be tired, and you're throwing your body around a lot, and it kind of, maybe it's not the muscle injury that you get hurt in another way because your body isn't just quite where it was, and you leave yourself in and you get hit a certain way, and you'd never put yourself in that situation if you weren't a little bit more fatigued.
Yeah, just on that, because obviously Lucas Kurzenstein is involved there. I know they have an app. They use that Actimed app that he actually helped to come up with, which basically means that the players log in and give feedback on how they feel before sessions and what their sleep was like and things like that. So I'm sure they're monitoring that fairly regularly. I remember him telling me before that he might pull two players aside before training and I'd be like, no, you're doing a tailored training session tonight. And they'd be like, no, but I feel grand or whatever. Yeah, but whatever you logged or whatever would say that you're in the red zone, and I'm going to pull you out. Sometimes you have to do it. I think when you get older as a player, you realize when you're coming into that zone, and you pull yourself out. But a lot of the time, particularly young fellas, and sure you know yourself from playing back in the day, you kind of think you're invincible, and unless somebody pulls you out, you're not going to pull yourself out. You know what I mean? So it's good to have that bit of, people would say maybe there's an overload of information at times, but when an information like that prevents an injury, it's vital.
Damien Comer is understood to be hopeful of returning at the tail end of Galway's league. He obviously got that injury against Roscommon, so it'd be huge to have him back. There was talk that maybe he did the cruciate, but luckily he didn't. The death has occurred of Tipperary's 5-time All-Ireland senior hurling winner, Mick Burns. He's from Nina Éire, 85 years of age. Played in 7 All-Ireland finals between 1960 and 68. Named as a substitute in Tipp's win over Galway in 68 as well. Tipp won 4 All-Irelands in 5 years. Less of this talk of, oh yeah, Tipp, the last time they won back-to-back was in the 60s. Well, they did 4 out of 5 in 5 years around that time as well. So let's not forget that. So, yeah. Go on.
No, it's 64, 65 was the last back-to-back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, because every year it comes up after Tipper winning the All-Ireland. Tipp, who haven't won back-to-back All-Ireland since 1964-65. Just like to offer my deepest sympathies there. Obviously, a massive hurling man, a massive hurling family. And I've been in Nina Éire several times. We played them up and down, and great club. And I'm sure they'll give him a great send-off.
It's not pronounced Nina now.
Nana.
Inside Nana abroad. Going to get some mate and Joey O'Connor's. Richard Hogan, too many competitions in January with end of club, Fitz and Sigerson, and provincial competitions that been pre-season, of course. Something needs to go really, because the league needs to start in February to line up inter-county championships and be ready for a club. Right, so the Hurling League is on this weekend. We're just looking at the top scorers after round 2. Viewers out there, we won't give it away just yet. Who is the top scorer in the league after 2 rounds? And we'll give you out maybe the top 8 or 10. We'll read them out in a few minutes' time. But get your comments in and let us know who's the top scorer in the top division of the Hurling League after 2 rounds. Is there any game in particular?
And would it be fair to say, Shane, now when you think about it, it's an amazing the change between league and championship. The man who's up at number 1, you'd be amazed if he's in the top 10 come championship. Just wouldn't you? By the nature of who's going to come back within a county. And different lads, and just say with regards to Limerick, if Aaron Gillan's back for championship, you'd imagine he's going to be their top scorer for championship. So he kind of, and for Clare, shall we say, Tony Kelly hasn't played any games yet. Will he be their top scorer in championship? There's an interesting one as well. Who will hit frees for Clare in the championship? McCarthy, Kelly, or Duggan?
Yeah, you've got your Rogerses as well that can hit your frees, your Kellys, your Duggans. I'd say it'll probably be Kelly. What do you think?
I don't know. It'll depend. And Ed McCarthy looked good against. He looked good the last day against Limerick, and I don't know. Maybe he takes a bit of pressure off Tony Kelly. I'm not sure. He's not as reliable as he is with ball in hand from play. Anyway.
Put it this way: let's say you're a free taker and you've got Tony Kelly on your team. Do you feel some pressure as you're taking a free, added pressure, because you're like, just Tony Kelly is there and he could easily come over and take this free? Or should I really be taking him when Tony Kelly's there?
I tell you what I always found kind of peculiar when Stephen Bennett and Pádraig Mahoney were on the same team and Stephen Bennett had taken frees. When and he might miss a couple early, and then the free taking duties are moved to somebody else. That's a thorny enough one. You have to say it's.
And for the manager as well.
Oh yeah, very, very awkward, because if you take a lad off a freeze, unless he's invincible mentally, you're probably gonna be taking him off in general play as well, realistically, aren't you?
Yeah. So some of the games this weekend aren't that, they're not explosive fixtures. There's a couple of decent ones. We'll kind of just read out the ones in Division 1. So Dublin are against Tipperary, that's on Saturday night. Cork Westmeath, Wexford against Clare, Galway against Limerick, Waterford Antrim, Laois Kilkenny. There's not too many massive fixtures there. Just before we come to the first one, which we're going to talk about, Wexford Clare, Pa OK says, do Tipperary celebrate too much, Shane? Or what's the story? This in terms of retain the title. 2019 was a lucky one, but should have won again after 2016, battering of Kilkenny. I think the problem is not kicking on, not bringing through more players, not tactically going on another level. But maybe there's also, you put so much into one of those seasons that maybe you sort of inhale and sort of relax a small bit and then play catch up the next season. Like Tipperary in 2017, absolutely, like,
So they
good
were
in the
going
league.
brilliant into the league final.
Then got scotched. And then we're just gathering up a little bit of momentum now. Needed to stop playing so much long ball. But we're so close against Galway in the semi-final. Remember that late point chance that Mikey Cahill had? And he probably wound up too long. Like, he had time and he was probably trying to make sure of it. And didn't Conor Whelan get in with the hook around midfield? And that probably would have been a leveler then in injury time. But it was just, I think Tipperary took too long to get going that season.
Yeah, and they did, and they were missing Barrett in 17 as well, weren't they?
Yeah.
Like that was. I remember when it was, announced or whatever that he was no longer on the panel, and I know he's only a cornerback, but to me he just offered a huge amount now, but back then he was just kind of so dynamic, and I just didn't think Tipp would win the All-Ireland without him. That's the way it materialised. But geez, weren't those unbelievable games with Galway, those semi-finals, the 3 in a row semi-finals. They were as good a games as been played in the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, another couple of really good comments here. Adrian McGrath says, Aidan McCarthy isn't built that way in terms of like worrying about Kelly, I should say. He says he thinks he's going to score with every ball he gets. He's more likely to be pissed off if Kelly gets the frees, I feel. That's interesting. We wouldn't know him as a person, but it's interesting to get that insight. Richard Hogan says Bennett was better from longer range than Porrick. And on that team, Sean O'Sullivan asked, maybe it's two lads who can play the sport can explain it to me. Why is Ozzy trusted with the longer range frees but not the closer ones? Surely if he's good enough for one, he's good enough for the other. I'd have a little bit of a theory on this. Now, and it doesn't necessarily relate to Ozzy, because I think he could probably score frees from close range anyway. But I think there are some lads who enjoy the longer ones, but they don't like the pressure of the shorter ones, which sounds a little bit counter intuitive. But the way I'd see it is, there's some lads, they're happy to hit one from 100 yards when no one's if it goes wide, nobody's going to say a word because Shajist was 100 yards. So they enjoy kind of opening the shoulders, having a crack. If I get a point, I get a point, and everyone says I'm a great lad. It's actually win-win, whether you score or not.
Yeah, fair point, yeah. I would have looked at it a bit differently because I don't know, what Ozzy's strike kind of seems to me would suit a longer free than a shorter free. Sometimes he draws the ball in a bit as well. Whereas if you're hitting a free from 45 metres out, there's no time to draw a ball. It's straight and true. Whereas if you're striking it from 100 yards, you can almost steer it through the post, if that makes sense from distance. But no, I get what you're saying, and there is an awful lot less pressure on someone standing up to a free 100 yards out compared to 45 yards out where you're just not expected to miss.
Yeah, we're talking some rock this morning. It's great, isn't it? What happens if with Limerick's freeze this year? Well, if it isn't Aaron Gallan, does David Reedy come into the picture? Is it going to be Tom Morrissey? Do you know?
Tom Morrissey hit a free. Tom Morrissey hit one free in one of the All-Irelands. I think he did. Maybe Gallan was gone off in 20. I think he might have hit one free that day. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there, to be honest with you. If it's a hazard, I guess I'd say Gallan will be involved.
Yeah. Our viewers are too windy to come up with guesses for who's top scorer this year, other than one man who Porter says has to be Ford as the top scorer so far. The rest of you are too windy to give us a guess.
Did Ford play much of that? Ford didn't play the first day. Sure,
he wasn't even brought on.
Yeah,
and yet he's the third top scorer with 115. Isn't that nuts?
Outrageous, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll give you another couple of minutes to guess now. Come on now. I think you have more in you now than that, not even giving us a few guesses. Wexford Clare this weekend. Tony Kelly could be back. We're hoping John Conlon's going to be back. In terms of Wexford, there's talk that Lee Chin will be back in the league before the end of the league, maybe not this weekend. And hopefully Rory O'Connor as well, because we'd love to see him back on the field.
Yeah, I think Rory O'Connor did full training session last weekend. I think it was last Saturday. He hasn't played for Wexford since he went off after 14 minutes in the All-Ireland quarter-final last year with a knee injury. He got back for the Martins. I think re-injured it in quarter-final, missed the semi-final and the final, and obviously was standing on, I think he was doing water in the county final when they were beaten by Ferns. That's Ferns. Ferns are quite good. So that's a long layoff. You're looking at June to June to February between playing, really playing any really competitive hurling. Chin was briefly talking to Darragh Egan yesterday. He said that Chin will play some part in the remainder of the league. I don't see him starting and finishing games or anything like that. And I think it's a matter of just managing him like they did last year to have him right for the Leinster Championship. Liam Ryan is out. Richie Lawler is out. I think Kevin Foley has a bit of a niggle. He is probably 50-50. And on a Clare, from the Clare point of view, I think it was this fixture last year that Tony Kelly was like reintroduced again. I'd say it will be this weekend again. Him and Condon were both listed in the 26 against Limerick and were pulled out before throwing. So I believe both those are back in contention. No sign of Shane O'Donnell yet. And do you know what? If you were a county manager, based on what he did that time he was over in Harvard and came back and got man of the match against Waterford in the championship after no league, and what he did last year, ending up as an all-star having played no league, I think you're just really looking at somewhere with him, aren't you? You know that he can hit the ground running. That's a particularly special type of player that can do that. That can just go from no competitive action to being at his best, if not the best he's ever been as an intercounty player. I think Ryan Taylor is in contention to come back this weekend as well. So I think
should have been an all-star last year for me.
For me, he was definitely in the mix. That Kilkenny game probably cost. Well, listen, Clare still got 2 despite being All-Ireland semi-finalists, but might have cost some other players. Maybe there would have been different personnel had they performed better that day. But it's getting towards that stage of the year where you're getting all your big guns back in. You want them at their pitch come championship. So a lot of them are eased back into action now. I'm going out to that game Sunday. Should be a decent game. And looking forward to that one now.
Yeah, so Wexford last day out, they fairly battered Westmeath. It was 223 to 115. Well, battered 11 points, but it was comprehensive, we'll put it that way. A couple of guesses for top scorer. Nyland, no, he was doing all his scoring in the Fitzgibbon Cup. Top scorer for May, says Flash, Peter Casey. Maybe he will be by the end of the year. But will I give him the answer at this stage? Any more comments in? No, there's no more comments in. Will we just tell them?
Yeah, go for it, I'd say.
Billy Drennan. So, will he keep them?
Yeah, like he won't be hitting threes come summer, like unless TJ goes off or something like that. But isn't it a great experience for a lad like that coming in and being given that kind of responsibility? And listen, that's a succession plan, really, isn't it? That's getting him exposure, hitting threes under pressure. Less pressure, you'd say, than what will become championship time, because he's probably going to take on that mantle whenever TJ steps aside.
Do you feel there's much pressure on Clare to win this weekend? Not because they lost to Limerick, but the manner of the loss and the fact that they got so many scores in garbage time when the game was over, that it was like, look, they still have 2 points. Like, it's not like they're, like they got that win against Westmeath the first day out, but they're up against a team that will be expecting to have a big summer themselves in Wexford. So I do feel that Clare will want to put up a bit of a show here.
I don't know about the pressure to win, but there's definitely a pressure to perform and put in some sort of a 70-minute performance, because the first half to last thing just wasn't good enough. And Brian Lohan demands a certain, etiquette is not the right word, but to leave it all out there the whole time. And if you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And for large stages of that Limerick game, it just wasn't what you would expect from Clare. Now, they've had bad results in league in the last couple of years. Remember, they went up to Antrim in Corrigan Park and everyone was writing Lohan's epitaph, and they bounced back, spectacularly that year, and did really good runs in the championship last year up until the semi-final as well. So I'd be expecting a much better performance. And if Condon and Kelly are coming in and featuring at some stage as well, that should play into it too.
Yeah, but it's just, again, for me, it's just going back to the end of last year as well. You had that performance against Kilkenny, and now you're coupling it with this performance against Limerick. I kind of think for their own heads, they probably could do with a good win and a good performance. Remember a couple of years ago, they went down to, Clare went over to Wexford, unbelievably windy day. And I think it was a low enough scoring game, but they went there and they got a comprehensive win. So I think they were very good that day, yeah. Okay, let's see. We'll go through a few more comments here. We'll hopefully have Tom Condon coming on very shortly. But PWell74, the Limerick man, says, Tipp with 2 handy All-Irelands in 16 and 19, getting in between a great Kilkenny team and a great Limerick team, like a fella at 10-2 in the nightclub twice. Do Wexford need a performance here? Very underwhelming league so far.
Well, they won 5 games in a row last year, then got hockeyed in a league semi-final. Darragh Egan kind of pointed to the fact that they would look at things a little bit differently this year, and that's probably something to do with the absence of Chin and Rory O'Connor as well. That I think you mentioned their trajectory was the word he used, that they maybe peaked too soon last year, were hammered by Waterford, and then sleepwalked into Leinster, ended up being beaten by Dublin, and only for that result against Kilkenny, they would have been gone early. So I don't know. I think there's a lot less pressure on Wexford because there's a, they're not all new faces, because a lot of them were kind of blooded last year. But like, if you look at the lack of experience outside of maybe Dee O'Keefe, Liam McGovern, Conor MacDonald, and a couple more, Mark Fanning, there's an absence of like experience. There's lads that are only in their second inter-county season.
Flash says here that Tipperary's 19 All-Ireland was softer than Clare in 13.
Oh yes, Flash. So
I'd say hey, look, I think you could put them in the same bracket. Didn't beat the best team to go and win the All-Ireland that year, but as Porter says, not Tipp's fault that you didn't beat Kilkenny in the semi in 19. No, it isn't. But I would, like, in 2016, Tipperary absolutely battered the heads off everybody. So Tipperary were by a mile the best team in the country in 2016. 2019, yeah, Tipperary got one against the head. I'd hold the hand straight up. I don't have the inferiority complex as a Tipperary person that I need to pretend that we beat all the best teams along the way that year.
To be fair to Clare, and I know we've ragged on them before, at least Clare beat an All-Ireland playing against 15 men. They're the one All-Ireland playing against 15 men. So, yeah, I go with that. I go with that. I'd say Tipps is probably the softest All-Ireland in recent memory.
And do you remember, of course, the semi-final when Tipperary went 4 points behind and down to 14 men and realised you don't have to capitulate just because you go down to 14 men? Do you remember that?
Touche, my friend. Touche.
Flash, Lohan will want them to make sure the Limerick performance was just a blip. If the Limerick performance is a sign of things to come, Clare will be in big trouble this year. Well, is it kind of a sign of where Limerick are going to be this year, or is it a sign of where Clare are going to be? You know, is it that Limerick are going to trot all over everybody?
Well, if they have everyone available, they do look just to be on the front foot a bit more in terms of fitness. And I know we have Tom Condon's coming on at 9:45 as well, and he'll give us a bit more info on Limerick and that and what he has seen maybe at close quarters and what he's hearing. But they definitely look like they're a bit ahead this year compared to where they were last year, where they always looked to be chasing their tail a bit last year. But then, listen, it came right when it needed to come right.
Yeah, of all of the teams in Championship, would you say Wexford have the weakest strength and depth? It's either the best 15 or no contest. You know, we'd probably need to think that one over a little bit more deeply because. Yeah,
I think we should. I think on next week's show we should go into the best squads in hurling maybe and go through depth the whole way down and see what way we wind up.
Sounds like it'll be a very short show. That will go on forever. Adrian McGrath says, seriously, folks, at what point do you believe the evidence in front of you? Clare couldn't care less about the league and deliver in the Championship.
Well, how do you know you couldn't care? How do we know they couldn't care less? Do we think they're not going to care less again this weekend? I don't think any team goes out to tank in the league, and you definitely don't go out to tank against your local rivals.
In Offaly, I presume you play a league, do you? I'm talking about club now. A club.
Yeah.
So do you care?
It wouldn't be. You would care, but it wouldn't be treated as seriously. Whereas I know in some counties, if like the Dublin Football League and Hurling League, yeah, both treated really, really seriously. There is a massive contrast in certain counties. And Offaly, the problem is in Offaly, sometimes the league runs to, the final could be played a week before Championship. Do you know what I mean? And that's just a bit of a disaster. That's a bit of a disaster. There has to be a clear break because you can't be playing one team in a final this week and potentially playing them in Championship next week, as happened with us actually last year. Because then, do you know what I mean? It's too easy for a team to kind of take their lick in the league final and come back and, do you know what I mean?
Take their league. But I do think that you have to take the league relatively important. Even if you're not going to play every one of your star players, you need to treat every game seriously. Like, hurling isn't like soccer, for example, where you can go out and kind of go through the motions. Once you're out on the field in hurling and Gaelic football, it's blood and thunder and that's it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a good comment in from Flash there. He just said, people see Limerick in 2021, 2022 and think it's poor league campaigns are by design. Kiely would have much preferred Limerick's first league win came earlier than on the final day against Offaly. And you can say that they were hoodwinking us or whatever. like they will. I don't buy that. And chatting
No.
to any of them, I don't think they're like, it's all a master plan. Far from it. I remember, as I said, he was chatting to Carl on the S&C, and he was like asking questions of himself during the league. Is like, I know I have the best program in place, but like, what's going on here? Why aren't we producing the results? So it wasn't a case of where they always thought it was going to come good. And I'm sure there were some worrying enough times throughout last year's league, and that's why they'd be much happier this time around.
Yeah, Dara Lahan says Clare were absolutely awful against Limerick. They were like a novice team. By God, he's gone in 2-footed there. Do you know what? We'll talk about Galway and Limerick when Tom Condon comes on a little bit later on. So we'll keep that one in the back chamber for now. Dublin against Tipperary. So Dublin beat Tipperary last year by a point in the league. That was in Semple Stadium. Before that, they hadn't met in the league since 2019 when Dublin won a quarter-final by a point, which was in Thurles as well. So they've won back-to-back games down in Tom Semple's field. But this weekend, there's sort of this feeling that Tipperary could fill it, the Dubs. And part of it is that it's not at Parnell Park, it's in it's in Croke Park, which is a wider field. But then Semple is also a very wide field. Dublin have won the last 2 times they've gone there. Now, do you buy into this narrative that this is going to be a heavy Tipperary victory?
I wouldn't have thought so, Shane. I wouldn't have thought so. Tipper going well, obviously. Dublin aren't going bad. Like, there was only a couple of points to spare over Antrim. Decent performance against Waterford the first day. Probably would have been disappointed not to get a win on the board. Particularly they were finishing with 13 men. Waterford were. I don't think to be trampled on or anything like that. Far from it. And obviously to be a handful of the Crokes lads involved that were brilliant in Croke Park against Ballyhale Shamrocks as well. So
in the second half.
Yeah, in the second half. I don't think it'll be a battering or anything like that. Far from it.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to this game. I'll be in at it. There is part of me that does think Tipperary could run a little bit riot here because, over the years, how often, several, like maybe 8 or 9 times in a game, have Tipperary worked the ball through the lines and popped lovely ball either side of the 2 inside forwards for them to just turn and stroke it over the bar. Like, that's the sort of thing, like, Jason Ford could have his biggest ever season. And I know people like to say, he does brilliant in the league and in the championship or whatever. He isn't quite the same player. But, like, if he gets that lovely ball played outside him, that he can turn and drive over the bar. And, like, he's a bigger man than you'd actually think. He's at least 6'1". Like, he's no small man at all. But if he gets nice ball into him throughout this game, it's going to be a tough day for the full back line of Dublin. And Dublin have brilliant backs. We've said that so many times. But if the ball keeps coming in on the front foot, it's very hard to keep the water out.
Yeah, I know it is. And I know Dublin have a couple of wins recently against Tipperary. But I don't know, when it's really mattered, Tipp have always taken care of Dublin quite efficiently, I would have said, down through the years, particularly in championship games. I'm expecting a competitive enough game here. I expect probably Tipp to win by a handful, but I don't expect it to be a landslide like that, far from it.
I'm wondering, will Mark Keogh get the start this weekend? In a lot of ways, people will say the Dylan Quirk Foundation match was, it was a friendly match. It was an exhibition match, which is true. But a couple of players went out there and got yellow cards as well because they weren't sparing the timber. So it just tells you that, again, the point I made a little while ago, that when you're out there on the field, you are playing a contact sport here. So there's something to be gained from this, and there's something for managers to take from it as well. And as I mentioned, Mark Keogh on Monday, Mark Keogh got 7 points from play. There was a period in the first half where he scored, I think, 5 in a row for Tipperary to pull Tipperary back into the game. 4 of those were from distance on his right-hand side, which we might consider his less strong of the 2 sides. I think he'll get game time this weekend in what will probably be Tipp's first competitive game at Croke Park since the 2019 All-Ireland final, is it?
Just thinking, was there a league fixture there? And I
well, if there was a league fixture, it probably would have been against Dublin. And as our stat sheet says there, they hadn't played Dublin in the league since 2019.
This is like, Tipp end 4-year famine visit to Croke Park.
Yeah. And actually, just back to that whole team of you don't have to capitulate with 14 men. The previous time that Tipperary played at Croke Park against Dublin, Tipp went down by something like 8 points. It was like really far behind against Dublin. Went down to 14 men also and ended up battering Dublin. Do you remember that?
I don't. The last time I remember them playing up in Croke Park, it was one of the worst nights I've ever seen up in Croke Park. Paddy Matter put over 2 points in a row consecutively, I think, both from Dublin puckouts. If he caught the ball and sent them back over, he was playing centre back. But I don't remember the game you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's March 2018. So let me see. Early on, Dublin were 10 points to 2 ahead, and Tipperary ended up winning 225 to 20 points.
Sorry, yeah, that actually does ring a bell.
That's mad, actually, when you look at it there. But anyway, look, I digress. We'll go through some more comments here. Adrian McGrath, this is talking about Clare not caring about the league. Because we lost to Antrim 2 years ago and got trampled by Cork and lost to Wexford and Ennis as well. The league is for testing if individual players can survive at a level. Clare did have a poor league last year too, says Richard Hogan. Too dependent on Ford to get scores. Adrian McGrath, yep, won one game, drew with Limerick and lost the rest, then had an excellent Munster. Tipp by 8 to 10. John Collins, Mick Burns, RIP. Tipp forwards, too knacky for Dublin's backs. Will pick scores for fun. But like, Dublin have beaten Tipperary the last 2 times. But look, I didn't think tactically Tipperary were set up very well last year. And, you know, you had Aidan Mellett, who's like a very quick change of direction, smaller type profile player, being marked by Owen Connolly, who's 6'4". You know, and like, great ball going in. It was never going to work. Like, so I thought it was a disaster waiting to happen from the get-go in that match. But Tipperary are much more solidly set up these days.
Just on Clare, on an Adrian's point there as well, they wanted Kelly back maybe for that Offaly game to get a bit of momentum going. They beat Offaly in that third round game last year. Drew with Limerick in the 4th, I think, as well. They timed the run, and maybe they're timing it again, but don't tell me that they'd be in any way happy or, you know, with that Limerick performance, because you couldn't be. And if you're talking about, you know, the league is about testing whether lads can survive at that level, there weren't too many lads putting their hands up to say they survived against Limerick. It was players that we knew were going to survive anyway.
Yeah, so get your comments in there on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Let's see, Pwell74 says Limerick, Galway League quarter-final, but who wants to be in a semi-final more? Did Paddy Mullen get a yellow card in that game last Sunday? I can't remember. I remember seeing him playing all right. He was out around midfield, but I'm not sure if he got a card or not. John Collins, I'd suggest the last 3 games of the league are more indicative of form than the earlier games. Look at Wexford last year. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by ourstore.ie, which is the home of the official merchandise of our game. There's a couple of things to inform you about. The live GAA club fundraisers that we're going to run. We'll bring a show to your town, celebrity guest, quiz, fun challenges, local legends, email events@ourgame.ie, and Michael will get back to you on that one. Coaching clinic, Michael Fennelly, Brick Walsh and Pat Ryan are going to be at Valley Rovers, County Cork. Welcome to anybody who wants to come. You'll be able to get a link to the tickets in the video description. We've also got one the week before in Piltown, County Kilkenny. What a lineup as well also here. Barry Hennessy, Pádraig Mahoney and Richie Power. So we've talked about Dublin against Tipperary. Waterford against Antrim this weekend. What sort of team do you expect Waterford to put out? Do you think they'll go as close to full strength as possible here? Or do you think, I mean, look, best will in the world, and Antrim are playing pretty well even though they're not getting the results. Waterford will be expecting to win this.
They will, of course. Even though Antrim put up a good show against Dublin the last day and put up a fairly good show against Kilkenny the first day out up in Corrigan Park as well. Mikey Kiely's going to be missing for Waterford, I assume. And I'm only thinking, because of his red card the last day, in one way, like, you know, with the Fitzgibbon on last weekend, knowing that you weren't going to be playing inter-county the following weekend because of a suspension, this is just me thinking hypothetically. I'm sure maybe in the back of his mind, he's kind of thinking, maybe I can enjoy my celebrations a bit more now, knowing that I don't have to play next weekend. That's just me in my own head thinking. Watford definitely haven't blown me away so far. I don't know about you. I know they were down to 14 from an early stage against Laois last day. They won, you know, reasonably well in the wind-up, but they really probably got going when Laois went down to 14 as well. Antrim have proven themselves to be a really solid, consistent league team. And I know Westmeath gave Waterford some trouble in the league a few years ago, I think it was down in Walsh Park, actually. And don't know if Antrim can get a result here, but I'm sure they'd keep it fairly tight again.
Yeah, they've been playing some good stuff, just haven't really been getting the results. Laois against Kilkenny as well this weekend. We've already mentioned Billy Drennan being the top scorer in the league at the moment, and he'll be looking to frank his form here. What have you felt about Laois so far? Just looking at the results, no points from 2 though a lot of that wasn't him, to be fair.
Sorry, your internet dropped off in the middle of that chain. You were just chatting about Laois there. Laois were really poor the first day against Tipp. Like that was a real non-performance, a real no-show performance. Much better the last day. Even before Kiely sending off, they looked like they had started a lot better. Started with a bit of a kind of an impetus. Was it Ryan Malani ended up like much further up the pitch? I think he ended up with 2-2, different type of a focal point up front, maybe. Ross King hasn't started either of the two games, I don't think, as well. So they're probably missing him from the attack as well. PJ Scully was injured the last day. Listen, it's not going to be a particularly inspiring league for them, really. You have a new management team coming in there. They're trying to learn on the job. There's not too many, in inverted commas, there's not too many handy games going really in 1B. And I think Tipp would have put them on the back foot in that first game, when they would have been trying to be competitive and keep it really as competitive as possible. What was it? Was it 20 something? Was it 20 points in the wind up against Tipperary? Which is just, that's an awful batter to take. Again, I said it was better the last day, but you have to take that caveat of having an extra man for about 40, 42, 42, 43 minutes. They were better the last day, but they're going to have to continue to get better.
Yeah, but they did play really nice hurling against Waterford. I know it was the red card early, but they played nice stuff, and they do try to be quite creative. And look, I had Willie Maher as manager there for a couple of years in Coola, and there was always this thing that feel free to try stuff out in the field as well. So I wonder, and I don't know what Dan Shanahan's like as a coach. We had him at a coaching clinic, but it's different if you have someone over a course of weeks and months. But I would imagine the players are give license to go out there, enjoy themselves, and try stuff as well. But Kilkenny will be in, I'd imagine, in mean enough form heading into this one after the way they were beaten by Tipperary on their home turf. Now, they had a good enough second half or whatever, but I think they'll really want to sort of put down a marker early here, won't they?
I think so, yeah. Like, if Derek is anything like his predecessor, they'll be hoping to bounce back straight away and put a good performance out there and kind of erase, any notions of whether there's any doubts about what Kilkenny are going to do this year. Listen, they were good last weekend against Tipperary. That was obviously an exhibition game. I'm sure they'll go to try and produce a performance this weekend again. And I'm sure over this weekend, maybe not this weekend, but definitely over the next couple of weekends, we'll start to see more of the Ballyhale players reintroduced into the setup. And listen, when you're introducing Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen and co, probably not TJ Reid in the league realistically, but they're only going to get stronger. And plus, again, I don't know, but I haven't probably seen enough of Kilkenny in person to see whether they're playing that much differently to last year. And I suppose you won't really know until the latter stages of the league early championship as well.
Yeah, Richard Hogan says Dan Shanahan's philosophy must be similar to Willie's, given that they've worked so closely together in the past. Yeah, but Bennett's Bridge and before that with Waterford also. And like I would imagine they'd want a fairly fluid lineup, a team that can, go back and have 7 or 8 at the back when they need it, transition to having 6 or 7 in the forward line when they also need it. A few more comments as well. Waterford probably still trying to find a balance up front. Sean O'Sullivan adds that Antrim nearly took the scalp the last 2 times we played them. Need to bury them early here. Waterford put up 2-31 on Laois. You can't expect to win any game conceding that. That is true. Interested to see what kind of team Ling puts out this weekend, which brings me to the next point I want to make, which relates to Garrod Dunn. He scored a hat-trick in that Dylan Quirk Foundation game last weekend. A bit like 1 or 2 lads like Mark Keogh I mentioned for Tipperary. I'd imagine that Derek Ling looked at that and said, you know what? For us to get a response after a performance in the league against Tipperary, I've got to reward lads who are showing me something. He's showing me something here. Let's throw him out this weekend. Yeah,
I think he'd be rewarded. And you were asking about Mark Keogh earlier. Like, I'd be very surprised if he's not rewarded as well. Like, if a lad is showing up that well, you strike while the iron is hot, don't you? Like, there's no point in leaving them, to come in for 5 or 10 minutes. I'd be giving probably both a start realistically. And see, you quickly, you have a fair idea what Mark Keogh is made of. Garrod Dunn at this level, you don't really know. But if a player showed up, that well last weekend, I don't think you take a pull and hold them back. I think you just let them off and see what they can produce and particularly in Dunn's case, see what he can produce in a really competitive game.
Yeah. Also, like Mark Keogh wasn't having a great couple of games in the early pre-season when I saw him. So maybe something has flicked with him. Some switch has turned at this stage. So, you might as well throw him out this weekend and see how he goes. Cork against Westmeath this weekend. Páirc Uí Chaoimh. After the couple of defeats that Westmeath have had already, -28 on the scoring difference gives you an idea of where they've been at, having played Clare and then Wexford. It doesn't get much easier this weekend against a Cork side that I think when their tails are up and when they're against a team that aren't expected to beat them, a weaker, look, let's call a spade, Westmeath are a weaker team than Cork. It's the sort of fixture where Cork go to town, isn't it?
It generally is, yeah. They played, I don't know, was it last year or the year before they met? It wasn't last year because Westmeath were Division 2A. And it was a tight enough kind of league game a couple of years ago, I think. I can recall it. I think it was, it was relatively competitive. But when Cork are going well, they'll fill it, yeah. Do you know what I mean? And when their dander is up, and I don't know about you, it's very hard to see anything other than Cork putting up 3 or 4 in the high 20-somethings here, realistically. And I don't see them conceding a whole pile. What did Westmeath put up the last day? Was it Westmeath put up something
115
like 115? I think it was 14 points the first day. Like, with the best will in the world, 20 years ago, that might win you a championship game. And obviously, Cork won All-Ireland in 99, hitting 13 points. But nowadays, you're going to have to be hitting 25 points to even. And sometimes you see in games now, really high-scoring games where it's like, 432 to 25 points, which is still a battering. Do you know what I mean? But be interesting to see from Declan Dalton's point of view. He was brilliant the last day. He played more inside against Limerick and was quiet. He obviously got that goal. He played out in the half line the last day and went into the full forward at different stages. He was brilliant. I'd imagine he'll get another go again, to another chance to impress. He started their 2 league games so far. And I just think he offers something a little bit different in attack. So I think he'll be one of those type of players, and that Pat Ryan will give a good go and see, we have a certain type of player. Can we find a place for someone like this who's maybe a bit more physical, not being fired in a good way, a bit more unorthodox as well? Do you know what I mean?
Did we wrong Declan Dalton by not even mentioning his name in the Risty list that we did the other day?
Potentially, yeah.
We wronged him.
Now, I wouldn't have had him in the top 5 or anything like that.
No, but we wronged him.
We have
to hold our hands up and say we wronged him, for God's sake.
He should have been mentioned for, modern players. He's an outrageous player. He's outrageous power in his strike as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we should have mentioned him. Apologies, Declan. We let you down there. Richard Hogan is talking about Grow Dunn. Dunn is very direct and was part of the under-20 squad last season. Also had a decent club campaign for Tullaroan, who ran Ballyhale close in the Kilkenny senior semi-final. Look, any comments on Cork Westmeath this weekend? Let us know what you think. A couple of games as we go down the tiers. Saturday, Kerry against Offaly, the big one. You're hyped for this?
It is a big game, I'll tell you that. Because whoever
it's top of the league, like.
Yeah, obviously Kildare are the third team that are on 4 points, and the other 3 in the division are all on Nipwa. So whoever gets, if there's a victory going here and you're on 6 points, you're not as good as in a good position to be promoted or be in that final place. But you're in a good spot, because if you just say we beat Kerry in an away game, then Kerry are going to have to, go and travel in their next couple of games. This is a big game. We had a good result there last year in the McDonough, a real high scoring game, because we had a couple of disastrous results down there a couple of years ago. I remember when we were relegated down to the Christie Ring as well. I think Offaly might just about do the job here. But it's a huge game for both, yeah.
Yeah, we've also got Carlow against Down this weekend, both seeking their first points of the season. You kind of mentioned it'll be the 3rd successive year they've met in the league. Down won by a point last year and won by 2 in 2021. So Carlow will be looking to turn that around. Derry against Kildare is the other game. So Kildare are looking to make a fair old bold bid for promotion. And after how Naas performed so well against Ballyhale, especially in the first half in the Leinster Club Championship this year, like, how big would that be for Kildare Hurling to see them up in Division 1 next year if they could keep this up?
That should be unreal, Shane. I've said it to you before about timing, though. Like, is it a bit too soon? Like, is it too much too soon?
No, but I tell you what, like, Westmeath have got a very unforgiving top division draw this year. So Westmeath have to play against Cork, Clare, Limerick, Galway, Wexford. Whereas on the other side, it's Tipp, Waterford, Dublin, Kilkenny, Antrim, Laois. There's still a couple of games you might get hammered in, but there's a few more that you think you've a decent chance in.
Yeah, this comes back to a structural thing then, because Westmeath won 2A last year and came straight into that Group 1A. Offaly did it the year before. So I just, like, it's only a small thing, but there's a lot of teams that would survive in that Group 1A. Westmeath, Offaly, and potentially Kildare next year, they are not teams that will survive. So, if they're going straight into that Group 1A, I honestly don't know if there's a massive benefit to it, being honest with you. If they went into the group Division 1 Group B, yeah, I think there's massive benefit to potentially play Laois, potentially play Antrim. You know, you're going to be a lot more competitive. But it'd be a fair rise through the ranks for Kildare if they are able to get up. From a timing point of view, a little bit longer might be better for them in the long term, in my opinion.
Now, if you were going to keep the leagues the way they are, could they not look at being like, okay, let's see how the provinces finished last year and try and not have the top teams from each side both basically in the one league pool? So therefore you could end up with Kildare if they go up against both Limerick and Kilkenny, for example, this year. You know, two of what are supposed to be, in terms of championship, the strongest teams, that they could try and look at how they did in the previous year in championship and sort of spread them out a little bit. But I don't know, maybe that takes away from the quality of the league, because you would want to see the Munster and Leinster winners playing against each other to improve the quality of the league. But anyway, look, it's another talking point. Division 2B is on this weekend. Wicklow are against London, Sligo are against Tyrone. Am I missing a fixture there? I might be missing a fixture there. You go through 3A and I'll just double check and see am I missing one from 2B.
I surely, we have Monaghan against Loud. Loud obviously had a big win against Roscommon the last day, which led to Francis O'Halloran's departure. Of Armagh against Mayo. Mayo haven't exactly lit it up so far in Division 3A after being relegated from 2B last year. They'll be looking to get a result this weekend. And you have Fermanagh against Roscommon, so that's Seamus Qualter's first game in charge of Roscommon. Monaghan are the early pace setters in Division 3A, and in 3B we have.
Sorry, just before you jump onto 3, the other fixture from 2B was played last weekend. Meath beat Donegal 123-19 or 16. That's
right. Yeah, Meath made it 3 from 3 last weekend, and in 3B you have Warwickshire against Longford and Lancashire against Cavan. We might have a quick quiz before we get Tom Condon on to talk a bit about Limerick and Galway. So I've gone into history this week. So these are historical kind of based questions. It's 3 different questions, and we'll kick it off there and then. I don't want that. I want answers all together. Okay. So hands by the buzzer. Who was the first Ulster county to win Sam Maguire? So the first Ulster All-Ireland Senior Football Championship winners.
Do I get a bonus point for naming the star man?
I think you might be giving it away a bit now. But, next to the only 2 counties that wear 3 different colours in their jersey.
Job done.
That's a handy enough one. This might be a bit more difficult. Name the only 2 counties in Ireland to never have won a senior provincial title.
Job done.
I'll fly back through them again. First Ulster county to win Sam Maguire. For a bonus, how many titles had that county won before the next Ulster county won an All-Ireland? So the first Ulster county to win All-Ireland, and how many All-Irelands had they won before the next Ulster county won one? The only 2 counties in Ireland to wear 3 different colours in their jersey. The only 2, I should say. And name the only 2 counties in Ireland to never have won a senior provincial title. Now,
easiest questions of all time.
we'll see whether the viewers think so. We've Fergus Butler in there. Cavan, he's on the ball, in fairness to him. Cavan are the first Ulster county to win an All-Ireland. Cavan are the first Ulster county to win an All-Ireland.
Oh crap, then I'm wrong.
You had the star man named and everything.
I did, yeah. Well, was it John Joe Higgins would be the star man anyway of that Cavan team?
John Joe Riley.
John Joe Riley, okay. Sorry, there was a Higgins in there.
The gallant John Joe.
I was thinking down in 61. Was it 60 or 61?
Sure, Carlo had won one in the Polo Grounds before then.
Carlo?
Cavan had won one in the Polo Grounds even before then, and did a couple more won before that too. I'm delighted. Sometimes you can be too confident in these scenarios.
Look,
I flied through the answers really quickly. So it was Cavan. They had won 5 times before Down won in 1960. I think there was like the guts of about 100,000 people there in 60 when Down won the All-Ireland. Carlow and Offaly are the 3 counties with 3 different colours in their jersey. And the only 2 counties in Ireland who have never won a senior provincial title are Fermanagh and Wicklow. So fair play to Fergus Butler. He was right in there on the money. He had all the correct answers. And I'm delighted you didn't.
Yeah, I've let myself down there in a big way. Longford won Leinster in 68, lost by 2 to Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final. And Longford have not been in a Leinster semi-final even since 1980. It's either 86 or 88. I mean, when you're talking about famines, to not even get to a provincial semi-final.
Yeah, that's disappointing, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, Patrick Coleman, Cavan, Kerry, Tipp, Mayo, Longford, Leitrim. No, Tipperary have only 2 colours. We might have a little bit of white trim in there the odd time, but come on. The blue and gold all the way. Had you gone through the Division 3A fixtures?
Yeah. 3A and 3B all gone through, all hurling sorted. I think we might have Tom ready to go. Have we?
No.
I thought we had. Apologies. I thought we had.
No, we don't have Tom at all. Will we talk a small bit about the football, and we'll come back to, well, look, Richard Hogan there, egg on the face, Shane. Certainly is. Yeah, I let myself down. I went in so hard there. And I got it so wrong.
You were overconfident. You were complacent. Just like Tipperary tried to defend in All-Ireland.
Yeah, I can't go back to back with these quizzes. Come here, Roscommon in the Football League. Haven't they been unbelievable so far this year? Winning 3 games from 3, all against top teams. They're all top teams in Division 1, obviously. But can they keep it going again this weekend away to Monaghan? And Monaghan obviously had a big win last weekend against Donegal.
I tell you what, they'd be disappointed if they can't keep it going. I know Monaghan had a good weekend, or a good result against Donegal. They didn't exactly light it up now. It was only in the second half, and it was probably when Jack McCarron really got going and Conor McManus was able to come in off the bench. And I believe Darren Hughes, Darren Hughes is 35, I think, and he's still going strong. He lorded it in that game. But if you look at what Roscommon have beaten to this point, I think to be confident enough going into this game at the weekend, you'd have to say.
Your Galways, your Corones, your Armaghs, they've put to the sword.
Well, they've beaten a team that were in, obviously, they were in the All-Ireland final last year. Armagh were in the All-Ireland quarter-final last year. Tyrone were the All-Ireland champions in 2021. I wonder, is there any element of, oh, we're safe now? Do they take the boot off at all? Do they, pull things back for a couple of weeks now that they're safe, or do the plough ahead here, try and get into a league final and see if they can get their hands on some silverware? I remember they went really well in the league in 16. They got through to a semi-final, and Kerry filleted them in the semi-final, and they didn't really have a great season thereafter. I don't think they did anyway, to the best of my recollection. So I don't know, but there's a lazy narrative there that people keep saying that Roscommon are way ahead of others physically, and I don't see it. I don't see how they are.
Don't see how they can be either, especially because Davy Burke came in so late. I mean, how much extra S&C could he have done compared to other counties?
No, not much, I don't think. And then obviously you have it. They've been really good in the second half, particularly in the last quarter of their 3 games. That's when they've kind of kicked on. I think they'd be disappointed if they can't get something out of the Monaghan game at the weekend. As tricky as it is from a Monaghan point of view, they're thinking, if we can get a result here, like, we're a step away from being safe again. So it's a massive game for Monaghan. If they had 4 points on the board here after the weekend, when things look disastrous after 2 rounds, Vinnie Corey would be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, he sure will. Owen Hurley says, bit late to hear, lads, but was listening to the Risty Hurlers bit the other day and was surprised to hear no mention of Joe Dean, Kieran Fraggy Murphy, and especially Ben O'Connor, who should have been in the top 5. Hashtag recency bias. And it also sounds like hashtag ye hate Cork.
Joe Dean would be pretty risky, all right. I would have, to be fair, there's 5 or 6 years thereafter from 2000 on that we probably should have factored Joe Dean into. Is he that risky though?
He'd be risky enough now, and he'd be knacky risky. Whereas
knacky's a great word.
It's not like he's taking the shot and it's, like, as we said the other day, the really clean golf strikes, it kind of takes off and then it almost takes off a second time. So I wouldn't have him as that type of ball striker. But yeah, between that and not mentioning Declan Dawson, Owen Hurley's after catching us out with the lack of with the anti-Cork bias there. Armagh against Kerry this weekend. Do you think Kieran Donaghy will mind being up against Kerry? Now this one's down in Ashton Stacks Park, so it couldn't be closer for him. It's fairly handy little trek. But do you think it would bother him now? Could there be a few people sort of, I won't say anyone's going to say anything poisonous towards him. I doubt they would. I'm sure he's held in very, very high regard, especially locally in his own parish. But, there could be a few little sort of sneery comments, we'll say.
I'd say it'd be a bit of crack. And like realistically, this is, what he's doing in Armagh is, not saying it's an audition, obviously it's not, but he'd love to get involved with the Kerry senior footballers, I'm sure. And the only way to do that is to earn your stripes, probably, unless it's with Kerry. If he's not with Kerry, and he's not involved in the current setup, you go and do it somewhere else. So he's earned his stripes. Armagh are a seasoned Division 1 team, and he's helped in that process as well. We're obviously beaten in that kind of controversial game against Galway last year. I don't think it'll bother him. Interestingly enough, I think the Tralee Warriors are playing Saturday evening as well. So this game is at 5. I think they're playing. What did they call it? Did they call it a throw-up for basketball? So it's throw-up at 7:30, or what did they call it? A throw-in?
No one knows.
No one knows. But there's
here to preview the weekend's basketball is Tom Condon.
I think it's called a tip-off.
Tip-off is the one. Good man.
How are things with you, Tom?
Not so bad. I had a bit of difficulty there now getting the connection, but I'm working off the phone, so all's good.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to start off there with Tom?
Yeah, no, Tom, just looking forward to the weekend. Obviously coming up against Galway. Looking back even, I presume one of your fondest memory in a Limerick shirt is against Galway. And we were talking about the hand of Tom earlier, the little statue there is in the club. Could just even roll back to that 2018 All-Ireland final and those kind of final moments.
Jeez, that's a long time ago, though. Yeah, but look, I suppose between ourselves and Galway, like, we always had titanic tussles, like, and I suppose the seed was set earlier on in that season in the league decider when we played them above in Salt Hill. When we came, I think we were 8 or 10 points down. I think we were at half time, and we came back to win the game, like, and that kind of got the momentum going for us that year, set the ball rolling. Like, we I say we got promoted, and then we kind of grew as the year went on. And as I said, then we met them again in the All-Ireland final, and I said the rest is kind of history. But yeah, look, Galway have always been kind of our, I suppose, would you kind of say, our bogey team the last couple of years. Like, they're always able to match us with whether it be the league or the championship or stuff like that. So, like, it's going to be another ding dong battle now this weekend.
Is that a physicality thing, Tom, that you think that they're able to match up with you particularly well physically, or what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think, like, physically and skill wise as well. Like, they're all well able to hurl, like, and God, whatever it is about up in Galway, like, they're just able to produce these big men. Like, I know James Scahill does be on there from time to time. Like, he's a big man, like, and I said most of the Galway lads, they're big, over 6 foot tall, like, and strong, almost like farmers, as you call them. Like, to be able to throw you around the place. But, like, look, physically, they are, I suppose, the one team that can match Limerick when you go to that middle third, I presume. Like, even last year in the Ireland semi-final, like, it was just an absolute war, like, and there were just bodies everywhere and just hits going in non-stop, like. And I suppose if other teams, if they have to take anything from that, is just the physicality that Galway have brought to match Limerick, like, and I suppose they've been the closest team to Limerick over the last couple of years.
Tom, when Michael Verney brought up earlier on about this little bust or statue of your hand, I thought he was messing. Is he serious, and what's it made of?
Yeah, it is. It is the club. I suppose, to honour the All-Ireland and stuff like that, and what I achieved. They got a local fella to do a hand carving of my hand and a ball inside it, like. So it is. I think it was at home now. It was in the local clubhouse there for a while, but I get a bit of a slagging about it, right?
I remember seeing McGregor doing something like that with the UFC. He dipped his hand in, like, wax. And, like, are they literally coming up to your house and, like, putting your hand in wax, or what's the story?
No, I think, as far as I know, he did it just looking at the picture of the All-Ireland final, like, of that still picture of me catching it, like. So I think he based it off of that now. In fairness, there's some piece of work, like, but it is bit of a slagging about it, right?
Yeah, and sure, a hand you're very familiar with as well.
Yeah.
What was I going to say, Tom? Is it timber? Is it a timber carving?
It is, yeah. It's made. I think it's made from oak, or as far as I'm not too sure now. But yeah, it is the hand itself. The sculpture itself is timber, and then there's an actual proper slitter now. It's not the one that I caught in 2018. That was Tom Morrissey took care of that when he put it into Rose 8. But no, they have a slitter put into it. Yeah, it is, and I think it's in a glass case now as well. So
go
on.
No, I was going to say, do you remember the feeling of catching the ball? Like, so the whistle still hadn't gone, but do you remember the feeling of catching it?
Yeah, okay. And when you're on the pitch, you don't have much time to think. Like, it was just literally just get this ball out of here. Like, we kind of knew it was the last play, but like it was just to make sure we just kind of got it out. So the first instinct was just to run, and you just always knew that one of the lads would be dropping back there, and like I said, the half hours are renowned for like dropping deep. Like, so Tom Morrissey was just there, so to just give it to him and let him go run with it for a while.
Yeah. And like, sorry, Michael, you seem to have a question.
No, but can you believe, Tom, like what's happened on the back of that? Like, it's mad, like just getting over the line once and ending that kind of famine. And look, like he could have easily won it in 19. I was slagging Shane earlier. We were saying it's 19 is the softest All Ireland won in a long time. I don't get to comment on that, but can you believe what's happened since then? Like, it's for a county that's been, pretty much starved of success, to see what's happened, since that catch, since that last couple of minutes of the All Ireland final at 18. Now, like, you're going for what you've won 4 in 5 years. You're going for 4 in a row. It's unbelievable, really, what the spin off of it.
Yeah, and like I always believed if we got to an All Ireland final, like being involved with Limerick since 2009, like I always believed if we got to the final that we'd win it. And we just were never able to get there. Like, we lost to Clare in 2013, and again to Kilkenny in was it 14 or 15? And then I just always believed if we got there, we'd get over the line. But I never envisaged like what happened since. Like, it's just, I suppose, the group of players that came along, they were coming up through a proper development in the academy and stuff like that. So like they were exposed to, say, the strength and conditioning, they were exposed to a high level of that, and the skill set as well. Like, they were getting top quality coaches and stuff like that. So, and John Kiely knew these players as well, and he tried to integrate them in 2017. And I mentioned it before. I remember meeting a few lads there towards the end of 2017 when the inter-county season was over, and I told him, I said, the next Limerick will win in Ireland the next couple of years. I know I didn't expect it to be the following year, but I said that the makings were there of a great team. Like, and I said, these young fellas that came on in 2017, they've just taken the hurling to a phenomenal level. Like, and look, that's down to John as well, and Paul Connork and the whole backroom team. Like, Paul Connork, his coaching is just, there's no words to describe it. Like, and everything is game based orientated. Like, and everything he does is with a purpose. You're not running laps, or you're not running to a cone for the sake of it. It's everything you do in training, you match it on the field. Like, and he was always a believer of training 120 or 30% above what the tempo or the intensity would be in a match. Like, so when it came to a match, you were able to do things comfortably. And even like, Limerick are renowned like for, I suppose, attempting these impossible passes and short pass in triangles and stuff like that to get out of situations. And I suppose Paul just encourages that in training, and you do it at such a high level in training that when it comes to a match, it just comes at an ease to these lads. Like, and as I say, he's coaching. These lads are only getting better because they're doing this day in, day out, like, at training. So as I say, from 2018, it's just taken off. Like, but I think as well, I suppose there's been a turnover as well in other counties as well. Like, some of the stalwarts or the star names have kind of, they've gotten to the stage of their career now where they were at the wrong side of 30 and they're kind of retiring and stuff like that. So there was a bit of changing going on in a lot of counties. I suppose that had brought back the count, or that has kind of propelled Limerick further ahead, because they already had that done in 2017. They had a lot of young fellas brought in, and now you see John Kiely, he's kind of integrating 1 or 2 young players a year now, like, just to keep that rolling. Like, but it was just that we got an influx of great players, and I suppose they have a great management team in 2017, and it's just, we're reaping the rewards now, and we just don't want it to stop. We would have taken 1 in 2018, but look, we won't complain.
And Tom, like, so when you're talking about Connork and Kiely first coming in and changing everything, and the games-based training and that kind of stuff, the results didn't come in the first year. And I was down in Nolan Park when you lost that qualifier, and I didn't think you'd performed particularly well that day. And I remember thinking at the time, 3 times during the match, there was Limerick players pulled on a ball that was on the ground that they probably could have gone down on. And I just thought it was so odd, even though I could see some players were class, the likes of Peter Casey and so on. But did you believe straight away, and at first, when these different types of activities were brought in rather than the old school drills going from maybe cone to cone, I'm not trying to do down any previous management, but like, did you at first think, well, I'm not sure about this?
Yeah, and like I suppose it just took time to embed the game plan and the style of play that Paul wanted us to play. Like, I suppose, look, Limerick would probably be renowned for off the cuff hurling or gung ho hurling and stuff like that. And like, I remember Paul Connacht pulled me up at one stage there early on in 2017. We were playing Waterford, and I got a shot puck out off of Nicky Quaid, like, and I was about, I suppose, 45 yards out from my own goal. But I turned and I thought I had a chance to shoot, and I took a shot. And I remember he just run in, and he was just there like, "No, Tom, that's no, just no." And he ran away, like, and he was just there, play it through the lines, play it through the lines. So it took a while for it to integrate into their game plan with the players, like, and I suppose there was shoots of it there throughout 2017, and I suppose we didn't bring that from the training field to game day in a few of the games, like, and that was kind of frustrating because we knew we could actually do it in training, but it was just to bring it onto the pitch on game day was the thing. And I suppose we didn't do ourselves justice in 2017, but I think that kind of stood to us because there was a lot of learning in it, and fellas could see what Paul was and John were trying to implement it within the squad and stuff like that. So I suppose it did give fellas hope, like, and you could see that there was something happening there, like.
Yeah, Mike Casey was at one of our coaching clinics in Naas not so long ago. I'm looking forward to Barry Hennessy and Pat Ryan going to ones as well in the next little while. But is there any sort of drills that really stood out to you and you were like, okay, I can see this working, or a drill that you like? Can you kind of give us an idea of some of the activities that you're like, geez, this really helped us on or helped me as a player?
We always just kind of slag like that. Most of the drills were forward orientated, like there was it was worst case scenario for the backs most of the time, like, so like you'd have maybe small drills, like there was never drills involving mass numbers. It was always maybe 8 at a time in a pod and stuff like that. So like you might have had 3 forwards taking on 2 backs and the ball's being pinged from out the field, like, and it was just worst case scenario. The forwards were trying to work goals and stuff like that. So it just encouraged you to communicate, to come out of your comfort zone. And as I say, like, it was you were operating at a level that way higher than what it would be in game day. So like, as I say, everything was kind of worst case scenario. A lot of small sided games to improve your touch and your reaction time and stuff like that, and basically to bring up your intensity for that, like.
Michael?
Was Paul very good? Paul's obviously a very intelligent fella, Tom, like particularly intelligent. But is he able to dumb down his message, shall we say, to make sure that everybody's able to take it in and know exactly what he's doing? He doesn't strike me as the sort of lad that's using jargony type of language and coming out all these terms that you'd be reading on Google Scholar or all these different documents. You know what I mean? He's able to dumb it down quite well, is he?
He is, and I suppose, look, he got a bit of a stick there with the water breaks. He used to bring out a tactics board, like, and I say he uses that the whole time. But it's just when it was the same simple message the whole time. He'd show you visually, he'd tell you exactly what to do, or like he'd go one-on-one with you, not a bother. He'd take the backs individually, forwards, midfields. Everyone knew their job, and even if you were a sub, even if you're number 36, you knew that if there was a chance that you did make the game day panel, that you knew that if you came on half back, corner back, or wherever, like, you knew exactly what you had to do, like. So in fairness, he's very intelligent, but he did explain everything, like, precisely, exactly, because Paul would be very attention to detail kind of fella, like.
And how much do you think you improved as a player? Just, even if you weren't starting quite as often as you were towards the latter end, but like, as a player, did you think you came on a lot, and in what ways?
Definitely, and I suppose, look, you do know yourself in training if you're going well or not, like, and in fairness, I did feel like I suppose the hurling and the fitness, it did go up a couple of levels, like, and as I say, in training if you're going well or not, and like, there was times throughout the year I did think, oh yeah, geez, I'm going well. And in fairness, John is very true to his word that way. Like, if you're going well in training, he will give you a chance in matches and stuff like that. And they're very like that. If they base everything off your form and training, if you're training well, if you're doing things right, and your attitude is right, you'll get the opportunities. And look, I suppose age wasn't on my side either. Like, they brought on all these young fellas, and they were trying to, I suppose, integrate them into it as well and give them game time. So yeah, look, I suppose I didn't get as much game time as I would have liked, but look, that's sport. You kind of move on and you kind of have to get on with it.
Just on what Shane was saying, Tom, you probably played some of your best hurling throughout the 2019 league, would I be right in saying? Remember, did you get a score against Kilkenny down in Nolan Park? I think you scored. Did you?
Yeah,
I got man of the match the same day as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I started the league well, and then I broke my finger in training with, we were doing a drill with Cian Lynch, and then we were on a training holiday, and we came back, and the whole COVID then hit, and the whole thing shut down. And when we came back with the club, I was struggling with an Achilles injury and stuff like that, and I got back to a place where I thought I was challenging for a position on the squad days, or the game day squad, but unfortunately I didn't make it for the semi-final or the final. And I suppose, look, I had a chat with John then at the end of the year then, and look, I suppose made a call then like this. Look, time wasn't on my side, and injuries were starting to rack up and stuff like that. And look, when the body starts kind of shutting down in a way, like I've picked up a few injuries now over my time, and it was taking longer to recover, and you might be going well for a few games or a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden another niggly injury might pop up, and it'll keep you back and stuff like that. So look, it's all them kind of little things you have to look at and weigh up, and we made a call then after that. But yeah, look, 2019 I started well, but it didn't end so well.
Did you what was I going to ask? Does John Kiely ever use the hairdryer treatment, or is he fairly cool, calm and collected?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a sort of Alex Ferguson at times, all right. No, there was no boots flying around the dressing room, but you would feel like there would be sometimes. I know, look, in fairness to John, if he does lose the cool, like he's a reason to, like, and in fairness, but it would never be too much. Like, they never lost the plot. It was always calm and cool, like in the dressing rooms. Even at half time, like he'd always kind of leave it to the players first as well, like to sort it out and stuff like that. In fairness, they were very that way. That it was us that was driving this. Like, it was the players. Like, it was us. Like, he just kind of steering it, guiding us and helping us. But like, it was us that had to really drive it on. Like, but at half time, during matches, whatever, like even before matches, he'd always be cool and calm. Like, but in training, if things weren't going well, he'd stop training, call it out, and you'd move on and take it on the chin. But in fairness to John, he's a very honest guy like that way.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about Kieran Carey taking up playing football with the Limerick over 40s. Now, obviously, you know him well, married to Sarah, his daughter. But were you surprised when you heard that news?
I don't think anyone knew he was even going playing football. He just popped up and said, "Oh, I was playing a match last night. I'm crippled today," and that's how we kind of found out he was playing the Masters football. But yeah, he made the panel there the other day, so a bit of slagging going on now with that.
Yeah, Tom, Kieran reckons he got you your place on the Limerick senior panel. He said back those days when you were playing intermediate, he'd burst out with the ball. He wasn't fit to clear it. He'd give it to you. You'd launch it up the field. And he said, "Geez, I think he got called in at Limerick the year after." It.
Yeah, yeah. In 2008, I was playing quarterback alongside him in the intermediates, and yeah, Kieran was towards, I suppose, the end of his career, but like, he used to just go up, tip down the ball, and Kieran would never go too far. He just used to just pop it out to me or the other cornerback, and we used to just launch it. And I think I got intermediate player of the year that year, like, and it was based on just getting ball off of Kieran and just launching it.
Was that how you ended up meeting his daughter Sarah?
No, I didn't meet her till 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a few years later. So it was ironic, really.
And a good player in her own right.
Yeah, geez, and like we've had a couple of children there the last couple of years, so she's had to take time out and stuff like that. But she's back playing Quogue, with the club this year, and she's after taking up a bit of long distance running, and she's going doing the half marathon and stuff like that. So yeah, I say she's getting the itch again to go back.
Who has the better touch if you're going out puffing at the side of the house? Who has the sweetest strike?
Well, just watching her there the last couple of games, I would say she definitely has the better touch at the moment.
And do you have boys or girls?
We've one boy, Nicky, he's 6, and we've 2 girls. They're 1.5 and 6 months. So busy,
Right,
busy
okay.
house.
So the girls aren't pucking ball just yet, obviously, at that age.
No,
but,
the young fella is all right. He's playing hurling and he's playing football, soccer as well. Like, so we're keeping him active.
Lovely. He's loving it, is he?
Oh, he is, yeah, and he's playing with Patrick Swell as well. So yeah, no, he's loving it. Mad for games and going up to game. He keeps asking when are we going to Dublin again.
Probably not too long. How do you think Limerick will go this year? Like chasing 4 in a row, which has only really been done a few times in the history, Kilkenny and Cork. But this Limerick team, like, will they get on with the best ever if they actually do it this year?
Yeah, look, as I say, we would have taken one in 2018, and what's happened since is just bonus territory. Like, but I suppose when you step back and you size it up and look at it, you know, there's another 1 or 2 All Irelands there for the take, and it's I think personally it is Limerick's to lose themselves, like if they get too complacent and stuff like that. Because as I say, most of the closest teams, they're kind of new managers or they're trying to integrate new players. So like there's a small bit of catching up to do, I think. But I think Limerick are still the standard bearers this year, and if they win it this year, I can't see anyone stopping them the following year. Like, you know, I suppose like it's testament, or it's the all credit to John and Paul for keeping that hunger there as well. Like, because I suppose Kilkenny can testify to this. Like, it's hard to keep that going like for so many years, year in, year out. Like, you know, and to come back and keep winning. So like if they do win it, yeah, they'll be borderline. I suppose they'll go. There's still another step to go to reach the best team, I suppose, of all time.
And who else do you think's in the mix this year?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, Galway, I think have improved after finding a couple of new players. I think, like, and physically, I think they're the team that can match Limerick. But again, look, anything can happen on a given day. I suppose they say it's a 2-horse race. Like, but if Limerick have an off day, they can be caught. It happened in 2019, I suppose. We were I suppose confident going into that game, and look, it signs on. It just shows like that we were a small bit off the mark, and Kilkenny took full advantage of it. I suppose Cork seemed to be Cork always have they have the players and whatever. It's just sometimes they just never seem to bring it on game day. And you know, they always seem to start very well in the year in the league and stuff like that, but it seems to fade when it comes to championship. I don't know, is it a mental thing or what is it? Waterford, Davy factor, you know, anything could come out of Waterford, you know. And again, I think it bodes well for an interesting campaign. Like, and I think it'll be a Limerick. I'm going to nail my colours to the mast now. I think it's going to be Limerick Galway final. I think.
Right.
I think we'll boil into that.
And like after that sideline in 2019 that was deflected out by Killian Buckley, and it wasn't given, you would have had a chance with a 65 to level it. Was that the kind of, like, once that happened, that's when the era of the short sidelines came in? And I'm not even sure, have Limerick gone for a score from a sideline since?
Yeah, and like, in fairness, you always would have backed Darragh Donovan to put it over, like, because he's very good at him, like. And I suppose, look, Paul is very numbers based, percentages and stuff like that, and I suppose they looked at the numbers, like how many times are you realistically going to score from that, whereas would you be better off to retain possession and work a score. And I suppose that's where a lot of these, you see most teams now are going for short sidelines, like, you know, unless now you have someone phenomenal like Joe Canning, you know, that's able to put a ball over from 65 yards, and you know it's going to go over. Like, Joe, it's all kind of retain the possession and try and work a score from there.
And did it take a while for you as a player to get used to the idea of, you know, the way you grow up, especially, like, you know, being a little bit, you know, from the era that maybe the three of us are from, you grow up and you're like, set fire to the ball and let the lads at the other end of the field deal with it. Whereas he's probably coaching you to be composed on the ball and take the extra second and not panic. Yeah,
and it does take a while to get used to it, and it's all about being comfortable on the ball then as well. Like, but I keep going back to, like, what the training was based on. It made you comfortable on the ball, you know, because you were exposed to such a high intensity in training and worst case scenarios, that when you did get on the ball, that you were more composed and you were able to make these decisions better, like, you know, and that's the difference, I think, for Limerick at the moment, is that they're a lot more composed on the ball than other teams, like, and they'll just keep recycling it, and they're comfortable passing the ball around. They're not afraid to do it. They're not afraid to lose possession and concede a score, but they'll keep trying it. They'll go again. They'll try again. And I think like that just comes back again to Paul's philosophy and his training and stuff like that. It's just to make you comfortable on the ball.
Tom, you mentioned there about Shane kind of asked you about whether John used the hairdryer in the dressing room or whatever. You know, as various little controversies or problems have arisen over the, you know, throughout his reign or whatever, he seems to be very good at nipping things in the bud. And it looks like the Moon Tour or the principle comes out in him quite quickly in that regard. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and look, I suppose it's better to stop it quick before it grows and manifests into bigger things, because a lot of these things grow legs, and, you know, stories get added to and stuff like that. So I suppose John is very good at just, I suppose, media management there, like, John, just nipping things in the bud and coming out and saying it as it is, like, and let there be no hiding places or, John. So, like, as you say, you can see the kind of teacher coming out in John there, like, that he's very good in those situations. I suppose, look, he's dealing with these situations day in, day out, like, but yeah, look, you can't hide away from these things. They have to be addressed and they have to be met head on.
Can I just ask you as well, were you in the Limerick dressing room long with the likes of, we'll say, Burns and Lynch and Hegarty and these lads and the Morrisseys, until you realise, geez, the mentality of these boys are a bit different? Or is there anything that stands out where you're thinking, geez, these lads are bringing something completely different to the table here? They're changing the mentality even within our dressing room.
Yeah, I remember Richie McCarthy has referenced it before as well. We were in a kind of a psych meeting with Caroline Curran and stuff like that, and I think this was 2017, and Richie passed some comment about yeah, hopefully now we win the weekend or in 2 weeks' time or something like that. And I remember Tom Morrissey just kind of turned around and he kind of said, "What do you mean, hopefully?" He said, "I'm here to win, and I'm here to win medals and stuff like that." And it's just kind of, geez, these boys actually, Joe, they're actually above their age bracket, like, Joe, they're head screwed on, like, they know what they want, like, you know, and they weren't long piping up, nipping Richie, like, and we were saying Richie McCarthy is probably, like, Joe, a hero or whatever,
yeah,
at that stage, and these young fellas coming in saying, "What are you saying?" Like, you know, we're here to win medals, we're not hoping to win, like, you know, we're going to win, like, you know, that was always their mentalities, we're actually going to win, like, you know. So I say, you saw that in a few of the psych meetings that we had.
Okay.
They haven't been too far along in the time that's passed since.
No, and like, it's just crazy what these lads have won, like, even from underage and through, like, the list just goes on. And as I say, I was referring to hunger there earlier on, like, these boys are just, they just want more and more. They want to win as much as they can while they can, because look, I suppose when you're gone, like, and you can't go back. But that's their mentality. They want to win as much as they can while they can.
And just a final thing from me then, Tom. You mentioned having a lot of injuries, especially as you get a little bit older. Are you doing much hurling yourself these days, or is the body allowing for it?
Yeah, I went back. I signed for St. Patrick's Well soccer team last year, and I kind of made dust to my ankles.
What sort of a signing on fee was involved there now?
Just more so to get me out of the house. But yeah, I picked up a bit of a nasty injury there. I have to get kind of 2 pins put into my ankle, but I've been kind of putting off the operation now for a while. But I went back and I played a bit of club hurling last year, right? After the first round, I said I couldn't just sit by and watch it. So I said I went back training, strapped it up, and played a few games. And yeah, no, I'm hoping to play again this year now with the club. I started over 35 soccer actually there last week, so I'm feeling old now at the moment.
Would you not be one of the younger lads in there, no? Would you be one of the younger lads though at the over 35?
I would be, yeah, it would be, like, so it was actually by chance one of the lads from the club said to me, we're playing a bit of an over 35 league there. Have you any interest? And I said, all right, go on. So I said, I'll give it a go. So came through the first game all right anyway, so happy out.
Happy days. Well, look, Tom, really appreciate having you on the show. Great old fun, and sure, hopefully we'll do it again.
No matter. Thanks very much, lads.
Cheers, Tom.
All right.
Okay, brilliant to have Tom on there.
So
Some great
you
insights on
actually
Limerick.
believe about the hand now? You actually believe about it?
Yeah,
Now?
I thought you were talking more rot.
No. That's one of the few times I wasn't actually talking rot, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay, we still have plenty of other games to talk about this weekend. Flash is very happy with that interview. Yeah, great stuff, lads. Says Flash. Really enjoyed that, chatting to Tom as well. So this weekend, we already talked a bit about Kerry and Mayo. Well, actually, with Kerry against Armagh. Will David Clifford return as a starter? Because obviously they weren't great last week, especially in the first half against Mayo. He came on, got a few scores, all right. Kerry have had a slow enough start to the league, just 1 win out of 3. So they probably will throw him in. If he's going to be talking out, you might as well play him.
Yeah, what do you think? I said it to you before a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'd be taking the softly, gentle approach with him. Like,
so would I. But like, if you're going to have him talking out at all, like, I'd say the lad actually just wants to play then, because you'd be probably frustrating him if you didn't give him game time.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have had him in the squad last weekend personally, and it would have been easing him back maybe this weekend. My worry would just be that, what are we now? We're the 23rd of February. You know, it's 5 months away from when they want to be winning on Ireland. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just my own approach. I'd be trying to.
But why have him there at all? It's yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have him near it at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit of an indictment of what else is there that they need to have him involved. I know, like, he's only a young fella. He's only just gone 24, and you don't want to be pulling him back. But I think sometimes in this instance you have to. Like, he's a lot done. Like, 30-something games throughout the whole of last season, taking in club, college, and county. I'd be pulling him back a small bit now, I have to say, but they haven't done that. So chances are he could start this weekend.
Yeah, it definitely is a small bit of an indictment of the other players, and also maybe the management looking too much into the league, because they're clearly going to waltz through Munster. I mean, maybe Cork will be better this year, but they'll certainly come out and they'll be in the All-Ireland series. Yeah, and they'll obviously be, they're not going to be playing Tailteann Cup or anything like that. So I do think it's a bit of a strange one. Mayo against Tyrone this year. So I was just thinking there, about Conor Loftus, the centre-back this year, wearing number 6. Wasn't it this time last year up in Healy Park that Aidan O'Shea was playing at number 6? So they really are trying different players to get a number 6, obviously different management teams. But Tyrone could certainly do with the results, having only won 1 of 3 games.
Isn't it unreal, Shane, when you think about any team? Like, you can talk about games and change or whatever, but having like a really good 6, a really solid 6, is so important. Like, your whole team, I still think hurling has changed, football has changed, but having that platform of, a really good half back line, with different options, maybe a holding 6, 2, one wing back in particular that bombs up and that. I don't think that will ever change within the GAA. Tyrone need a result this weekend. And just back to Kerry for a second, like, Kerry should stay up in Division 1. Like, they should be able to get the points without Clifford, So it's a bad sign for, the rest of the squad if they're not able to. And obviously, Shawnee Shea will be pulled back in fairly soon, I'm sure, too.
So he came on last week.
Yeah, sorry, he came on last week. He'll be thrown back in from the start, I'd say, fairly soon as well. From a Tyrone point of view, they need to get points on the board as well. They get facing into a funny one where you could have Tyrone at the end of this weekend. You could have Mayo or Monaghan on 4 and Tyrone on 2, which you wouldn't have predicted a couple of weeks ago. Division 1 is kind of really good like that this year, in the sense of it's very, very difficult to predict what's going to happen. Really unpredictable and volatile. And
everyone already has points on the board. Like this weekend, Donegal, who got their 2 points against Kerry, they're up against Galway, who are on 3. So Galway are in 4th position in the league, despite having 3 points, and every other team underneath them has 2 points. So it just kind of shows you how tight it is there. And as we kind of mentioned earlier in the show, the fact that Damien Comer is going to be back sooner rather than later is obviously huge.
I think Shane Walsh is back around as well, but I don't think he's going to be involved this weekend, but he probably will be involved the weekend after. I think they play Monaghan the weekend after, so he could get a few minutes in that game maybe.
Okay, Division 2 of the league this weekend. So Dublin and Clare, that's going to be part of the double header at Croke Park this weekend. Dublin Clare, I mean, yeah, it's just not a fixture you would have thought about in the league, is it really, given how dominant Dublin have been over the years? Dublin have won 3 from 3. Clare have 1 victory from their 3 games, but it's been tight in those matches. They're only -4 in the scoring difference. That kind of highlights that. But I could see Dublin filleting them this weekend at Croke Park. I hope not. I hope it's a competitive game, but you would fear for Clare a little bit.
I don't think they've played in the league since like the mid-90s. I think 96 is what rings a bell to me. Now, Dublin are a funny one. Dublin didn't blow me away against Clare. Definitely didn't blow me away against Cork the last day. Now, Cork were probably maybe a bit better than I thought they would be. But like, Clare obviously had that brilliant result in Croker last year, beating Roscommon. And then, you know, they got a fair whacking from Derry in the All-Ireland quarter-final. But I'd say Dublin by, probably Dublin by 7 or 8, but keeping them at arm's length throughout. It's a funny one. Like, this is a bit of a mad one to be in Croke Park, isn't it? And like, if you've Dublin and Tipp playing in hurling and Dublin and Clare playing in football, which is the more marquee tie? Because the football is on as the main event, but you'd nearly say the hurling would be the main event. It's a tricky one. Like, I don't know. This to me has Parnell Park written all over it. This tie probably should have been in Parnell Park.
And actually, I know you'd obviously, a lot of people wouldn't be able to get in, but if this was a double header at Parnell Park, you wouldn't be able to move in there. It would be kind of cool as an event, but obviously you want as many people as possible getting there. Kildare against Derry this weekend. Derry have 3 wins from 3, plus 26 on the scoring difference. Something I like to mention a lot, but it kind of does sum up from 3 games. If you're plus 26, you're going very, very well. Kildare could do with a win here as well because, you know, they've only 1 win from 3 games. And
imagine they ripped up the script now this weekend though, and Kildare ended up on 4 points. They were able to get a win over Derry, and that would obviously put the Dubs on the front foot then as well. That would make the Dublin-Derry game in round 5 even bigger, because if Dublin were to win that, then there's a chance there that Derry would be left out in the cold again.
Yeah, and Kildare came from behind against Clare last week, where they were down a man and they were and it won. So that, like, considering they'd lost their 2 previous games and they were under serious pressure now all of a sudden, Glen Ryan and co, to get a win from there was huge. If they could frank their form in Newbridge this weekend, that would be huge.
I think they were beaten by 14 points. Was it 14? 2-14-7. They were beaten by 13 points when they played in Newbridge last day against Cork. Surely, like, a place that they've had a really good record in recent years, beat Dublin in the league there last year, drew with Kerry, I think. Obviously beat Mayo there in the championship in that Newbridge or nowhere game. Surely there'd be a bit of a hop off them in Connacht's Park, and nothing like what happened against Cork will materialise again there. You'd imagine so anyway.
I'll throw out a question for you here and to the viewers as well. Who's the top scorer in all 4 divisions of the National Football League at the moment?
I think I have it.
Okay, then don't answer it just yet. We'll come back to that in a little while, see if our viewers get it.
Just on Kildare as well, I think crucially Daniel Flynn came on the last day, and he's obviously, like, we know him as like one of the best footballers in the country on his day. He came on and kicked a point to get them back in it. I think he kicked the levelling score as well. Don't know, did you see that Emmet McMahon point that was disallowed as well? I know it was in the first half, but there was a point in it at the end of the game. Like, that's, you know, a disaster. He made himself look nearly that good that he double hopped it, if you get me. That's kind of what he was punished for. But just on Daniel Flynn, Kildare having him back, like, Jimmy Hyland's a really good player inside, and Derek Irwin, we've waxed lyrical about him as well. But Flynn is really that kind of X-factor player, and I'd imagine he'd probably start this weekend.
By the way, we've got plenty more Gaelic football on our Gaelic Football 2023 show. Stephen Poacher and Enda Varley, they were live on the show last night, so that is available to watch at any stage now. Those 2 boys, it's a roller coaster. We had Davy Burke and Enda Varley together last year. We put Poacher in now that obviously Davy's with Roscommon. But by God, it's just as much of a roller coaster, isn't it?
You could just be standing back throwing like little black cats and little things that, because just fireworks from start to finish. The boys are great, in fairness. Loads of really good insights. Obviously, Enda played with Mayo during some of the golden years, and Stevie's been involved in, you know, with Carlo under Turlock O'Brien. He's involved with Roscommon and he's involved with Fermanagh football or Fermanagh.
Which Enda asked him about at length as well, because Fermanagh had their arguably the biggest win in their history. That victory over Mayo a few weeks ago was huge. So Enda goes on all about the Poacher effect, and of course Enda being a Mayo man. Although I'm not sure how much he cares about hurling, I doubt he cares that much. But Pádraig O'Malley says, "Who do you think will win between Mayo and Tyrone?" On form, you'd have to go with Mayo, wouldn't you? Because Tyrone are just sputtering a little bit, and Mayo are going quite well.
Yeah, I probably would go with Mayo. They're obviously unbeaten, with 2 draws included, but their best performance so far came the last day against Kerry, so I'd probably be tipping the hat to Mayo there. Yeah,
okay. Next fixture that we're going to talk about is Meath against Louth. Do we need to bring up 2010?
Well, just when these 2 counties meet, I think you kind of have to in a way. But like as controversies go, don't know if it gets much bigger than that. See, the thing about the Offaly sitting on the pitch in '98 is that there was a resolution to that conflict. So something happened and the game was replayed 6 days later, and the best team won the All-Ireland in 1998. But in 2010, there was no resolution. And I remember chatting to Nigel Crawford after, and he said that he thought that the GAA hung the players out to dry, and they did really. And it was very like the Glen and Kilmacud thing. And listen, there's people in Louth and elsewhere that will take that to their grave. And Joe Sheridan's goal, that wasn't a goal. And Louth might never get a chance to win.
Louth also didn't manage the game. Like, they had the ball up the other end of the pitch. They gave it away cheaply. They could have held on to possession. And now here's one for you. This is as obscure as it gets. The pub in which I watched the Louth Meath match is now the sponsor of a county jersey, a different county. Name that pub.
I reckon you watched it. I reckon, are they the Leitrim football sponsors?
Yes.
I can't think of the name. You have me. It's out in New York, isn't it?
It is on McLean Avenue.
And just on that as well, the top scorer across all 4 football divisions, I think, is the Leitrim man, Keith Byrne.
Yes, it is indeed. Nobody commented in with the answer there. He scored an incredible 227 from his 3 games. Fair play to him there. 213 of that from play. No, sorry, 211 of that from play. So fair play to him. Yeah.
What's the name of the pub again?
JP Clark's.
JP Clark's, yeah.
Yeah, I spent that full summer of 2010. So I was hurling in New York that summer, but I got very friendly with the people who worked in JP Clark's. John Madden.
I'd say you were in there most nights.
John Madden, who'd won an under-21 All-Ireland with Tipperary, he was the bar manager at the time. He obviously came back and was he was an assistant with Michael Ryan with Tipperary. Selector. But I was doing the barbecue out the back for them one stage as well, making sure all the lads that were hurling with Tipp New York alongside me, they were getting well fed. And there was actually a thing that if you wanted to come and watch a GAA match in the pub, this was happening all across the country. I think it was someone like Setanta or someone at the time, they provided the feed if you were in America and you wanted to show GAA games. But people were charged at the door of pubs. And this was kind of overseen by, I think, the broadcasters or whatever. People were like charged 20 quid a head to go into the pub to watch these games.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was given us, because I was doing articles about the games and stuff like that, they gave me a special office downstairs where I could watch on my own in peace and quiet.
They gave the feed and you provided the feed.
There you go. So everyone won. Anyway, that was a little aside. So Meath will face against Louth this weekend. Cork are also up against Limerick. So Cork were very good last weekend against Dublin. Brilliant late save from David O'Hanlon, denied a winning goal for Brian Hurley. So Limerick, they're winless after 3 games. And as you said, Limerick are what?
Winless.
Check your note. They're winless, but check your note.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I wrote Limerick are winless after 3 games and on the hind tit. They surely are in Division 3. Or in Division 2, I should say. And, like, listen, they look odds-on favourites to go back down to Division 3, unless, like, Louth would have been a game that I'm sure they would have focused on. So that's again, Cork beat them, I think, last year when they met them in Championship. No, maybe not last year, maybe it's the year before. But they'll be hoping to try and get some sort of a result there. But recent history would suggest it's going to be tough. In Division 3, then you have obviously down towards the tail end of Division 3, you have Longford and Tipperary on 0 points. They're actually facing off this weekend. And Paddy Christie, who was coach under David Power in Tipperary, is now Longford manager. So he'll have a fair insight in there. But a draw would probably be a disaster for both. One of them needs to get 2 points on the board and give themselves some chance of staying up. Cavan are making the trip to Offaly. They're top of the table with 3 from 3. We probably tipped Cavan and Westmeath beforehand, and it looks like they're probably are the 2 favourites, with Fermanagh close by. Down are on 4 as well, and Offaly are on 4. Down had that setback last week against Fermanagh. They'll be hoping to bounce back this weekend. They're at home to Westmeath. Again, that game will go a huge way to telling who's going to be promoted in this division. Antrim face off against Fermanagh. Antrim had their first win last weekend against Tipp. They're playing off against Fermanagh. Fermanagh be on 6 if they win that. Offaly face Cavan and Longford face Tipp. And in Division 4, Laois are looking to continue winning ways. Paul Kingston struck, I think, 110 last week for Laois. as they beat Carlow. They're facing off against Wicklow at home this week. Waterford, who you'd have to say have been struggling, they're facing Wexford. London against Sligo, and the aforementioned Keith Byrne will be hoping to shoot the lights out again when Leitrim play Carlow in Sean McDermott on Sunday.
There's some amount of stuff covered in this show, haven't we?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by ourstore.ie. It's the home of the official merchandise for our games, so please do support us there. Also, we've got live GAA club fundraisers. We're going to be bringing a serious show to your parish. Rowan Moore and Watford are the first club that have signed up, so we can't wait to do that show in Rowan Moore. Also, coaching clinics coming up. Everyone is welcome to these coaching clinics. Valley Rovers, County Cork. You're going to have Michael Fennelly, Brick Walsh, Pat Ryan. You're going to then have one in Piltown, County Kilkenny the week before March 3rd. Richie Power, Barry Hennessy and Pádraig Mahoney. You couldn't bait it with a stick. That's it for the show today, Michael Verney. We'll be chatting to you again next week.
Cheers, fellow.